On to formally declare the meetings of the Hearings and Engagement Committee open. And this Engagement Committee is for the principal purpose of hearing the submissions with regard to the Founders Theatre site in the West Town Belt. First of all, I move to apologies, and that apologies from Councillors Naidu Rolfe, McPherson, Forsyth, Mangatu'ua and Thompson Evans, and apologies from Councillor Thompson at this point who's on council business currently. That be noted that Councillor Thompson's on council business. I move they be accepted. Seconded by Deputy Chair Ewan.
Chair.
I'm sorry, partial apologies at 11 o'clock. I've got another meeting.
Partial apologies.
At 11 o'clock, I've got to go.
Yeah, okay, we're hoping, and I just sort of point out that because we are the servant of council, this committee's, our quorum is ruled by the particular committee we serve. In this case, the quorum for council is 7, so our quorum is going to be 7, so we'll just have to, hopefully that we've got the Zoom, nothing to do with you, it's Zoom as well. Okay.
And Chair, I have to leave at 12:20.
We're hoping that we'll be through the submissions by then.
And Chair, I might say something witty or a joke that no one gets, so I'll apologise in advance for that.
You said a few years
I did.
Was that the joke?
Yeah,
I didn't hear the joke. I'm told it was a joke.
Started I meant to carry on.
Why would that surprise me? Right. Okay. I just now want to confirm the agenda. And the agenda is as on your... so confirm the agenda. Moved Deputy Chair, seconded Councillor Maxine Van Oosten. All those in favour, those of the contrary, say carried. Is there any declaration of interest? This is an information only. I don't think there would be any declaration at this stage. Note. And then we now move to item 4, which is the confirmation of the Hearings and Engagement Committee open minutes of the 20th of October 2020. Move Councillor Pat. You were at that meeting, were you? Yeah, okay, that's seconded by, were you at that meeting? Seconded, yeah, you. Okay, that's all those in favour, those contrary, carried. Okay, yep. We now go to...
Chair, can you just move down a fraction? I've got that screen sitting in front of me. I'd like to be able to look at the whites of your eyes during the meeting. Thank you, that's much better.
As the Right Honourable Rob Muldoon would say, I want to see the whites of their eyes and then go and punch them on the nose. Yes, that's right. Yes.
Well, I start off with the right name anyway, don't I?
Yeah, you do. You do, Rob. You do. Absolutely. Okay.
Thanks.
Now, Founders Site Engagement 2020 verbal submissions report is... I think, is Sean Murray here?
Yes, but we will start with submissions.
Yeah, what we're going to do is we will start with submissions first, and then Mr Murray will join us at the end when we start to discuss the questions we want staff, the issues that we want staff to raise. And as we're aware, this particular process reports directly into the City Council LTP process. Right, our first submitter, and we... organisations have 10 minutes, individuals have 5. Obviously, I'll repeat this throughout the day. Take it that the submission has been read, and we're encouraging people to use their time to highlight the key points and then allow time for questioning. Jeremy, Creative Waikato, please join us.
I'll sit on this side just to balance the room out a little bit. Morena Council, it's good to be here again 2 times in 1 week. Looking forward to my name badge. Yeah, as Martin said, we take the submission as read, and we agree with the idea of option 2, but with the key thing being around the maintaining some elements of the building. So thinking about the history of this site as being a space for performing arts, we wanted to make sure that it was really clear that there's still some element of serving the performing arts in what the site is. And now, having spent many years in that building performing myself, knowing that there is the dressing room wings, which were added on kind of after the fact, and the front being added on after the fact. The hope is that with things being cleared and the problem areas being demolished, but keeping that dressing room wing and keeping the front nose, we'll call it the nose part, will have great benefit for the way that that park works in the future, particularly if, I'd like to recommend that there is an outdoor stage as part of the plan. And so if there is an outdoor stage, having those dressing room wings will be vital for people activating that stage, because people who are putting on productions need space to get ready and to put their costumes on and to store equipment and things. But the other key element with this, and it has been noted in the Waikato Cultural Infrastructure Plan, as well as in consultations around the Waikato Regional Theatre, is that there is a lack of rehearsal venue in Hamilton. Rehearsal for performing arts, for dance, for music, and so there's a real opportunity, I think, with that dressing room wing, if it is made into a single standing building and may have some of the swipe card access, PIN code access things. Ideally, there could be an online booking system. People could go on, pay their $20 or $50 or whatever to rent the room for an hour, get given a code, go up to the door, put their code in, get into a room. So it doesn't need to be manned, but it can be activated, and it can be a key part of making sure that that park still supports the performing arts and really enables that kind of broader ecosystem between the theatres we have, the new regional theatre, and how we develop new work as a kind of broad city. So those are the key things that I really wanted to speak to, and I'm really happy to receive questions around that.
Right, thank you. Questions? Councillor Bunting?
Kia ora, thank you, Jeremy, for your submission. It's on behalf of Creative Waikato?
It is, indeed.
Okay, yep. Thank you. With regard to the rehearsal space, those rooms, they're quite teeny tiny. You're talking about the dressing rooms as well? Or?
Not the ones at the back of the wing, the wing to the side. So they're the bigger dressing rooms.
Yep.
I think there's, from memory, and it's a fuzzy memory, there's 5 of them, but there may be 4. There's sort of 2 downstairs and 2 upstairs.
Yeah. And
they're of a reasonable enough size for a small production or a band to rehearse in. They're not going to be great for a big dance thing, but there are other spaces for that. But I've noted online multiple times, I think, when we had the meet the councillors in our space before the last election, but also most recently last week, there's been a call from the arts community for space for bands to rehearse. I think there's a lot of potential in those rooms for that as well.
Cool, thank you. And have you given much mind to the idea of noise? Because now we've got a lot of residents right over the road. Do you see that being a problem?
I don't think so. There's some that can be done around soundproofing. Some of those rooms are soundproofed anyway because you've got cast in them next door to a stage. So there is a level of that already in the space. But also I think having operating hours being of a reasonable time frame. Right. But also if you want to have that stage, that outdoor stage, which is in option 2, there needs to be a way to activate that, and I think that's going to come with some noise, but that's also the nature of living in a city.
Yeah.
You want that city to be active and vibrant, and sometimes those things are noisy. As long as they're not noisy after 1 o'clock in the morning, I think we should be all right.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Even if we close it off by 10, that's probably appropriate for the residential area that's there.
Thank you, Joe.
Yep, thank you. There are a couple in front of me, but
I'll just go to you then.
all right, thank you. Thanks, Jeremy. And I note your submission. Thank you very much, and for the photograph. It just does help to be able to see the vision that you have. I wonder if you could let us know what kind of expectation you have around the car parking that's existing there, and what need there might be for access and parking with your proposal.
I don't think there would need to be any additional parking. I'm not sure in the plan how much parking was maintained, if any, but sure, it would only need a few car parks there for dropping off of gear, but you'd need a way to access the site if there was going to be a stage anyway for the delivery of things, and it would just support that whole activation of that as an option. So yeah, I don't think there needs to be extensive parking to make that be a viable option.
Thank you.
Councillor Pascoe?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Jeremy, for your work on this and the ideas, which probably something I hadn't thought of. If I called your suggestion a renovation because we've demolished part of the building and retain other parts which would need to be, to some extent, renovated so that they were standalone and able to be used, and the outdoor stage, are you aware through all your contacts with Creative New Zealand and central government and whether there's any funding sources that could be available to us or to the community if we decided, like we've done with the other theatres, to hand those over to a trust that could undertake the cost? You know, given council would do the demolition and we've agreed that we would do that part of it, do that renovation and even the outdoor stage, which I think is a great idea.
Potentially. I mean, I'd like to note that the outdoor stage was listed on the council option 2. That's not my addition.
No, I
so
agree.
I assumed that would be part of the situation anyway. But I think there is some Ministry of Culture and Heritage money that they're just finishing the consultation on at the moment. The first round is a capability funding, which will come out in the next 6 months, I believe. And then after that, there's an innovation fund and a wellbeing focused fund. And that's 60 million for innovation and I want to say 40 million for the wellbeing fund. So there could be scope in that, but they don't have the details on what that is and how it will be.
Where it would apply and so forth. Yeah. And we certainly wouldn't need all of that. So
yes.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate your response.
Deputy Mayor Taylor, who's zooming in.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Jeremy, thanks for your very thoughtful submission. And from my point of view, there's a lot to like about what you're suggesting there. I'm not the world's most visual person, and can you help me in terms of aesthetically, if we've got a sort of park-like environment there, how do you envisage we could make it look good, you know, by retaining that foyer and dressing room wing? How could it be dressed up so aesthetically it looks good?
Well, I think that in terms of that kind of foyer area, that's the potential there is that it's quite a quirky looking building, and maybe there's an opportunity for a commercial tenant as a cafe in there. So thinking about that as a separate thing, it's got that weird kind of nose shape which could be quite iconic on the park. In terms of the bigger dressing room wing, I think, and I believe that there was a submission from Boone or maybe from Paul Bradley that talked about putting in artwork that referenced the iconic performers who've performed on that stage. You've got your Louis Armstrong and there's a long list of names that have just left my mind. So there could be a real potential in the keeping of that building to speak to the history of the site, local performers and international performers who have graced that stage. So it would look monolithic, but it would become an icon, I think.
Right. Okay, thank you. Final question.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Final question, Mayor Southgate.
Thanks, Jeremy, and I like your vision for the space. Just in terms of what remains of the actual structure that is Founders, so you support the outdoor stage or performing facility. That's good, and and presumably you also feel that some landscaping, some seated terracing, banks to sit on and other things like that would be useful. How big would the residual building part need to be to incorporate storing some gear and potentially rehearsals? Is it still, what is it? Is it half? Is it 3/4? Is it?
I think it's maybe a quarter of the site that's there. To be honest, I'm working from memory. It's been 5 or 6 years since I've been into the building. But I do know that the wing that's closest to the Seddon Park, there's a new entrance there. That part of the building was added on in my lifetime. So I know performing on that stage where it didn't exist, and then when it did exist. So there is a component there that could work, but it would still, and from the mock-up that we've provided, I think there's still a lot of space for the park, for the outdoor stage, for the seating, for the fountains, for this kind of active and vibrant space. But without seeing the detailed plan of the site and being able to kind of measure it up, I don't know. Maybe Sean may know.
So does, would any of that, well, yeah, we'll get to the staff in a minute, but will any of the potential renovations include the bit with the high bit?
No.
So it'll all be in the bit that's least affected by earthquake strengthening requirements?
Yeah, it sits out to the side of where the fly tower and auditorium is.
Okay, thank you very much. And in terms of Creative Waikato, obviously council may obviously have further interchange, with you.
Definitely,
with regard to this project. That's understood. Thank you very much, Jeremy, and Creative Waikato. I now wish to invite Zola Rose from Common Ground.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for inviting me here today to present. My PowerPoint didn't get finished until this morning, so I'll make that available to you afterward. I'm going to use that as my guide for today. So I'm speaking about this Founders Theatre Park as an opportunity with immense potential for regenerative demonstration and practice. And my roles and expertise and why I'm submitting on this as a director of Common Ground. We're about enabling regenerative settlements. I'm a regenerative practitioner trained with Regenesis. I'm an active citizen here in the city, and I like to help to be a part of shaping great places to live. And I'm also a concerned parent, and I want wonderful places for my children as well that are climate resilient, and I'll be speaking a bit more to that aspect of it. So when I use the word regenerative, there's a lot of ways to define it, but in this case, it would be enabling the places where we live and work to thrive. And it works on potential in a way that creates greater vitality. And it's about designing our built environment and human systems that can co-evolve with natural systems. And it works to create fields of caring and commitment among stakeholders and stewards. So it works, like I said, quite a bit on potential. And I'm going to be speaking about the framework in which we can kind of maybe rethink how we might be able to look at and utilize this site. And I like to use the 5 capitals framework. Some of you might be familiar with that. So we know about financial capital, and that's about money. But we also have other capitals that can be developed and thought about simultaneously. We have our natural capital, which would be the land and the nature that we have available to us to develop on and the potential within that. We've got the social capital, which is the fact that the theatre is there already and there's social activities that are already been proposed and how it could serve in that way. We've got our human capital, which is how we can develop skills, knowledge, agency. We've got our built capital, which is at the moment that building is still there, and what other structures could be available to enhance that potential. And then we've got the financial. And I would say that there's potential even for the site to generate. If we look at a social enterprise, for instance, on that site, how could it generate the financial capital? So I'll be sharing with you some examples of places both in Aotearoa and outside that have been able to utilize a similar type of space in an urban center, utilizing and taking advantage of building up these 5 capitals simultaneously. So my first example is of Cultivate Christchurch. I don't know if any of you have been able to visit that site. It's really amazing. So after the earthquakes, it just left a bunch of empty spaces. And so Cultivate Christchurch stepped into one of those spaces and has developed. And its actual first function, although when you walk onto the site, it's very green, you'll see food growing, and that might be the first thing. Actually, they developed with a human capital framework first, which is focusing on youth development, and they particularly work with youth who kind of fall between the cracks, and mentoring, building their capacity to build them up as human beings, and also their capacity to be able to grow food and work within the organization. Their second function is urban horticulture, so they grow a lot of food, and they distribute that food in different ways, make it available through a community-supported agriculture, and therefore it's generating that financial capital, and obviously the natural capital as well. And then they have a green waste and composting system where they're harvesting the food waste from various different businesses around the city. They're bringing that in, and then they're turning that into compost that they use on their site and they're selling. And all the while, the youth are being developed through those processes, and people are learning. That's how I know about it. I went there with the Social Enterprise World Forum and learned about this wonderful model and how they're teaching others through that. There's also in Auckland, or Tamaki Makaurau, we've got the Organic Market Gardens. I don't know if any of you have been able to see that. It goes by the term OMG. And it is a project that falls under the For the Love of Bees. They consider that piece of ground, which was, again, if you look at the pictures, just an empty piece of ground. It is a center of regenerative learning. They offer many connection points for learning new, emerging, biology-first ways of growing regeneratively that contemporary soil scientists around the world are discovering. These are exciting times in the horticultural sector with new possibilities for working with biology instead of against it to contribute to food production, becoming climate change-ready infrastructure, and being of biodiverse habitat. So they are in the city center showing off regenerative organic farming. They're a beacon of radical hope through food. And their vision is to enable communities and urban centers to have access to local, fresh, affordable produce within walking distance, grown in a way that heals us and the planet. And they've generated a lot of energy in that project. And then I brought, because I'm emigrated from South Africa, I visited this amazing park in the middle of Johannesburg that is doing amazing things, and it's been around for, I think, about 3 decades now. So again, urban center. It's called Siakana Gardens. I actually put this in my submission. It's a change agent for promoting health and transforming communities and enhancing environments. In the beginning, it was pretty much set up as a food, selling fresh fruits, vegetables, maize, and herbs to the local early childhood development centers and local NGOs. So really that food security piece of it. But then they've added on so many things. They have transformed to become a city, region, nation, and even worldwide demonstration center in training and research. So they have achieved the following. They transformed a dump site into a flourishing garden. It's quite an amazing place to visit. Transforming mindsets with regards to health and nutrition. They transform unemployment into entrepreneurial opportunities, and they transform entrenched attitudes into sustainable practices. So my suggestion going forward is regarding the regenerative potential of the site is to bring in a regenerative practitioner or permaculture practitioner to be a part of the planning, design, and operations team to really think about these 5 capitals and into the potential that this site has, considering all the different challenges that we have facing us in a city around climate and sustainability and food security and all those wonderful things. And to continue to learn about how open spaces in urban areas, like the ones I've shown you, and there's so many more that I could have shown, that are being developed into regenerative projects.
Right, thank you. That's great. Now, just with time, we've got 2 minutes for questions. That's great. Thank you so much. I start, Mayor Southgate.
Has any thought been done to, apart from the demolition of the actual building, any thought being done to what costs might be required to create a space as diverse as that? And also in terms of the West Town Belt, sports, community or green space are the only 3. So you're saying that this would meet well-beings across, well, not sports, but it will certainly meet well-beings within the framework of the Green Town Belt?
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. So a regenerative space, if it's done with permaculture principles, can serve multiple functions. You've got your ecosystem services of creating soil percolation and abilities to catch water, you know, mitigating water runoff, and creating shade, cooler spaces, et cetera. It's leave spaces for biodiversity, and again, that food production. And of course, there's training and skills development that can happen at any time on that site. Yeah, sports and recreation, I would say working on a piece of land is definitely physical activity.
No, I wasn't really
but
referring
not,
to the sports, but
yeah.
we've gone through a whole exercise of being consistent with the Wealth
Oh,
Based
yes.
Plan.
Yes.
But do you know what sort of costs such a comprehensive development comes with, or at all? Or would you be able to? Do we know anything from Christchurch in that respect?
No, I don't know costs. I haven't done a costing because I didn't have this. It really does, I think, start with design. And from the design, we can look at, you know, where we can, so sponsorship can obviously help with costs if there is anything around plant donation. It could be in the process of creating it, it is an opportunity to learn. And so some of the design team could be those who are learning, and therefore you're you know, cutting costs on labour.
Some guide from Christchurch as well. Can I just now, in time we have left, go to Councillor Bunting for the final question, please?
Yeah, mindful of the time. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for this. It's quite exciting. Have you thought to talk with Kote Pacifica regards their development at that end of the Western Town Belt, with a mind to, if this isn't successful, putting something like that in that space up that end with the hill and the trees and...
Oh, no, I didn't know of other groups that were interested.
With their big whale and their big thing up by where the Hinamore Park is.
Oh, no, I hadn't, but thank you for that lead, and yeah, I can follow up with you on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, when I submit this, then you can follow up with me about any other ideas that come to mind.
Fantastic. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Your time, that's
Thank you.
excellent. Thank
you.
The next submitter is now Lucian Nabs. Is she he, sorry, apologies. I'll have to recognise my names. Yeah, Lucian, this is an individual submission, so you have 5 minutes. Take it that the submission is read, and obviously give us time within that for questioning if you would, but do highlight your main points. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Kia ora, everybody. I just wanted to start by saying thank you for being here and giving your time for our voices and my voice to be heard. Yes, my name is Lucian. I was born and raised around the Waikato area, definitely born in Hamilton, lived in Cambridge, have spent most of my time in Hamilton since then. And I'm pretty much just here to give a voice to my demographic, some of the younger people. And you can see from my submission that I'm all for option number 2, having a multi-purpose recreational space. And what I'm mainly going to be talking about today is not necessarily what the space is going to be used for. I'm all for what you guys have planned, but it's more what it represents and what I think we need more of here in Hamilton in general. New Zealand is such a young nation, and we're still growing our culture, our identity, and developing who we are as a people. And as we grow and more cultures are coming in, that's becoming a little bit more confusing, and it's also still needing more development as we move forward. In particular, Hamilton lacks a lot of that culture and identity as well. Whenever I've moved from here and gone somewhere else, I've lived in other places, I've studied in other places, people ask me if I'm in another country, oh, what's a typical dish from New Zealand? What do you guys eat there? And I go, we have a hangi and we have meat pies. And then other than that, there's not really much more that I can give because there's such a lack of that association, or, you know, who is New Zealand? Who am I? And in Hamilton, even more so, when I went and studied down in Dunedin, people go, oh, you're from Hamilton. What do you do there? And then that was the first time I was really stumped and thought, oh, well, I don't even know. We have the gardens, which are amazing, and we're slowly getting more and more parts of culture and parts of identity that Hamiltonians can begin to associate with and begin to become proud of. But what I'm encouraging is more of that. So the space that you have, that we're going to be having here at Founders Theatre, that recreational multi-purpose park, is an awesome idea to giving space for expression, giving space for reflection, giving space to connect to nature. Just a quiet place in town. It would be great to go for a coffee break, or great to go to meet friends for lunch, anything like that. So I think that is awesome. But what I'm again, wanting to express and say is more of that, is developing more places and things that New Zealanders, that Hamiltonians can identify as a part of their culture, as a part of themselves. And what we as young people, when I talk with my friends, what we want is more things like that, more things that we can identify with. And when I look around Hamilton, when I move through Hamilton, there are parts which are done really well, and there are parts which I question and think, why is that there? It's kind of like a missing link. There's no theme correlating through the city, or it might be a piece of art which I'm just like, I don't quite understand. What does that have to do with anything? So there are some parts which are done really well, some spaces which are done beautifully in the city, and there are some which are kind of just a bit lacking. I think we need to draw on our Indigenous roots, and then I think we need to start highlighting our multicultural branches and just find that link, find that theme, so that we are a bit more expressive and a bit more artistic in the way that Hamilton presents itself, so that we are proud and we do have that place that we can proudly call home, that we can say, yeah, I am from Hamilton, and damn right. I think that, so let me just collect my thoughts. I think something else that we need to do is, I'll quickly rattle off this last point, is create a culture of enabling in Hamilton, to allow young people who have ideas and who have talent to want to stay here, so that it's easier for them to foster their ideas, so that there's not so much bureaucracy and wanting to make things happen, but it is a culture of enabling and allowing things to grow, whether that's pairing with, the Wintec, the university, to create an incubation hub or whatever it is, but giving pathway, giving access way for young, innovative ideas that are slightly outside the box, that we can have a place of expression and just develop that place that we can be proud of.
Look, thank you. I have a question from Councillor Hamilton. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Lucian, for your presentation. And I completely agree with you in terms of identity and that sort of thing. What are some examples specific to founders that we could do that, speak to that issue that you're talking about?
I've had a couple of ideas. You could create more up-and-coming young music arts festivals where you're encouraging not only the young artists of New Zealand, but you put it out, so the young artists of Hamilton, but you put it out to New Zealand, where you're looking for up-and-coming artists, musicians, whether that's, on canvas, whatever it is, to come together to perform, and then at the same time you can look for getting in, whether that's talent developers, to just create a hub of expression. And so you could have a music arts festival, you could have a food festival, you could have anything else which is just kind of showcasing those pillars of culture: food, art, music, anything that enables expression to both grow and create the space for discussion, to create new forms of those pillars of culture, and also just to showcase it.
Thank you very much for your submission, and thank you for taking the time. Thank you very much.
That's
Most
all right.
appreciated.
No, thank you guys very much.
Very thought-provoking, if I may say. That's really, thank you.
Pleasure, thank you.
Cheers.
Enjoy your day.
Thank you. I now invite Di Roach to join us, please. Not here, in which case I go to Judy McDonald. Welcome, Judy, or welcome back, I should say.
Good morning. As most of you know, I'm the coordinator of Living Streets Hamilton, which is a pedestrian advocacy group, but I am presenting solely on my own behalf, though with an interest in pedestrian issues, obviously. In my original submission, I supported option 2, but rather reluctantly. It was difficult in the online submissions to explain that reluctance, so I will do it now. Option 2 is significantly more costly and more structured than option 1, and my reason for supporting it was purely because I actually believe option 1 would be the best alternative for the city, particularly given the financial issues facing council, which are huge in the wake of COVID and other problems. The thing that bothered me was that option 1 still provided parking as part of that area, despite the rest of it being converted back to trees and grass. There was a parking area. I think that's potentially a dangerous thing to mix with young families who might be using the area, and defeats the purpose of integrating that space into the Western Town Belt. Given the intensity of apartment development that's currently occurring around the Founders Theatre site, providing residents that have very little or in some cases no open green space, it's very important that we provide restful, natural spaces for people to recharge themselves in. There's been a lot of publicity worldwide over the past decade or so about the value of forest bathing as practiced in Japan. The health benefits of being able to walk or just sit in large open spaces shouldn't be underestimated. If the parking spaces were completely removed from the Founders site and the area returned to grass and trees, with the retention of the dandelion fountain, it would help to address the need for natural environments in the inner city. And the money saved, because this is the cheapest option, could be used to provide genuinely safe crossings between the individual components of the Western Town Belt, because only light-controlled crossings with audible signals are going to make those areas accessible to those with visual impairments or mobility issues. I also would like to just briefly address the fountains themselves. I am totally in support of retaining the dandelion fountain. It's attractive and it's safe for children to play in hot weather. I don't think the same can be said for the Hilda Ross fountain. For one thing, the large area of concrete steps leading down to an open pond feels more like a death trap than a public amenity, especially when you're looking at small children using that area. From a personal point of view, I also think there's no design merit whatsoever to the Hilda Ross fountain. And admittedly, I've never fully recovered from a close relative describing it many decades ago as reminding him of a collection of small boys peeing into a pond with an upturned rubbish basket in the middle. By comparison, the fountain area in Garden Place is a very attractive one, much enjoyed by children and not a hazard. I think we could do so much better, probably with a smaller overall footprint, and provide a much more functional and aesthetically pleasing feature, particularly in the absence of the Founders Theatre building, which I think has to go. The formal structure of that existing fountain will seem very out of place and incompatible with more natural surroundings of either option 1 or option 2. My suggestion, therefore, is that Council adopts option 1, but with the removal of all parking and the removal and possible replacement of the existing Hilda Ross fountain with something smaller, safer, and more suited to the environment that will be developed there. Thank you.
Right. Do we have one question from Mayor Southgate?
Just one in respect to connectivity of travel. So you'd be supportive of any improvement in shared walkway, cycleway through that connected space towards the stadium?
Yes, preferably if it's going to be a cycleway around the outside, walkways certainly through it to encourage people to just wander. But yes, I think we need connected.
Not a cycleway in through the centre either, because like Christchurch with that shed.
It would need to. It would obviously need to be very wide to avoid conflict with pedestrians, and because in reality it's a limited space, it's not that large. I suspect it would be better to have the cycleways going around the outside or on the fringe of it rather than through the middle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Judy. The next submitter I have on my list is Ben Kenny. Not here. Kevin Hodges. Not here. Okay, if Laura Callaway is available via Zoom. Welcome, Laura, and as you're giving an individual submission, 5 minutes, and obviously take that your submission is read, obviously, as you know, highlight the key points and just allow us time for questioning. Welcome, and thank you for coming to us via Zoom. That's excellent. We're in your hands.
Kia ora. Kia ora, Laura Callaway speaking. I'm actually speaking on behalf of myself, but also several other submitters who just didn't feel able to speak, and that is Neil Baker, planner, Lynn Williams, who is a Waikato historian that you're probably familiar with, Warwick Callaway, a retired architect, and Gordon Downey, who's a retired quantity surveyor. So our submission is fairly consistent, I think. We're also involved in the construction, architecture and heritage field. And the other two people who aren't part of our team today are actually the late Tom Smith and also the late Tom Muir. Both of these people were highly experienced in their fields of architecture and construction, but more importantly, they were part of the team that actually put together the Founders Theatre in its first format. They were highly sort of confused by why this building couldn't be, one, maintained, and two, actually fixed, and three, more importantly, seen as what it is, which is Hamilton City's Town Hall. So our group is looking to see that a few things are just rectified. It's been stated that the place doesn't have heritage value and would not be put forward for scheduling. Unfortunately, if you look through your documentation, you'll find that your consultant actually advised that it did actually have heritage values and also that it could be put forward for scheduling. The reason for bringing this up is, one, there's opportunities potentially for additional funding to actually help with repairs if this pathway had been looked at. So we're keen to see the place actually recognised for what it is, which is Hamilton City's Town Hall. We're very keen for it not to be demolished. I'd have to say that you're probably familiar that there's at least two others that have been demolished in the past, which is the Hamilton Town Hall that was in Victoria Street by the swimming baths and the Frankton Town Hall. I think it would be rather appalling to see a third one actually added to this collection, when in essence you have a building that's 50 years old, repairable, fixable, usable, and loved by the community. So our recommendation is that those aspects be investigated, the scheduling be put forward in terms of its heritage values, but also that there be a better development of option 3, which is the redevelopment of the place. Associated with that is that while we're all ratepayers and of course have been thinking the place was maintained in the interim and of course enjoying its using and all the facilities that it provided, it would be a big ask to actually ask a group or an individual to come to the party and actually repair the building alone. And so we're suggesting a cooperative approach and, of course, keen to see more interaction and better environment around the actual place as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Do I have any questions? Councillor Bunting.
Yeah, I'm sorry, and Laura, this question actually isn't directed at you, but rather at governance. I'm trying to find Laura's submission. Yes. When I click the link, I end up with all those emails, but I can't find Laura's submission itself.
Right. It should actually be in there. I have to say that
no, that'll be a potential glitch. We'll make sure.
Okay, no, thanks, Laura.
We'll absolutely make sure that gets.
Yeah, sorry to take up your time with that.
So the reason for that is it wasn't made through our normal process, so it's a part of the list of emails.
Oh, okay, so I'll scroll through and find
it. But we'll locate. We'll make sure Laura will make sure it's circulated.
Right, there'll be at least several others to go with that.
Sure.
So that would be Neil Baker's, Lynn Williams, and Warwick Callaway.
It's on page 34 of those 52 pages.
Yeah, and 23's Lynn as well.
Okay,
thanks.
We'll try and source. Just one question from me, Laura. The later in the afternoon or later in this morning, the Toti Trust is making a submission. Would I assume you'd be in broad support from what I've read of that submission? Would you be in broad support of that?
Yes, definitely. I think it's really clear, sort of trying to read through the documentation that's been presented. presented, you struggle to actually work out what's going on with your engineering reports and the advice that's been given, and there's plenty of opportunity for development and repair, which of course is very important.
Thank you. We'll make sure that those other submissions are are located. Obviously, they're there, but we'll lead all elected members to the exact location. So thank you very much for your time.
That's all right. You're welcome. Have a good day.
Thank you. The next submitter is Diana Ruri from the Hamilton H-Town Skate Project. Is she? Right, welcome. And that's followed by Hakan Assisi from the Hamilton Skate Project. I assume it's a separate.
He didn't make it today.
Right.
It'll be just me.
Sure.
Well, kia ora koutou. I'm Diana Ruri. Oh, a little bit of a slide. I'm here today representing H-Town Skate Project and the skateboarding community of Hamilton. Now, for over 5 years now, H-Town Skate Project have been working towards the support and creation of a central city plaza. When we approached the Hamilton City Council in 2015, we were given some homework to do. Some of you wanted to see more proof that skateboarding wasn't just a fad and questioned what statistics were available at the time. Since that initial visit, we've put in the hard work to prove that skateboarding is a sport worth considering, and we're really excited at the opportunity of Founders Theatre potentially turning into a shared space. I'm nervous. We have seen firsthand how providing a space for positive activities can help curb unlawful behaviour among youth. We've found that when youth have nothing to do or nowhere to go, that is when they cause trouble. We, as an H-Town Skate Project, have assisted the Parks and Open Spaces team to facilitate the build of the Melville and Norton skate parks and can see the massive positive influence both of these spaces are having in their community. The resurgence of skateboarding is here in Hamilton, and it is heartwarming to see families from all walks of life enjoying these parks. So let's keep this momentum going, connect more communities, and drive people back into the central city by transforming Founders Theatre into a new shared space. We support the principles of tactical urbanism and like the idea of having pop-up shops nearby for local business or youth groups to showcase. The idea of a diversified space means everyone can fit in and feel at home. Skateboarding also has transferable skills, and you see this amongst peers who interact at the park. Some picking up photography, art, videography, building, design, or fashion. Skateboarding has proven to lead individuals to a variety of positive paths. There's a little bit here on benchmarking. So benchmarking shows Hamilton as being left behind other cities, with many new high-quality skate parks being constructed around New Zealand. When considering a location for a central city skate park, H-Town Skate Project members scouted locations around town and all settled on Hinemore Park or Founders Theatre. Some of the key benefits of this location include a visual amenity, including space to host events, close proximity to public transport, high public visibility and surveillance, and existing close amenities. I've made up a little bit of information to leave here and I also made a video presentation, but I thought it might be a bit distracting to have that playing while I was speaking, so I do have more information available if you'd like me to email anything through. There's some contact details.
I'll ask our governance advisors to collect, to collect that and circulate. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for the time to speak today.
Right, questions. In summary, if I've got this right, notwithstanding Fairfield and notwithstanding, you're looking at a central city location which the West Town Belt would provide.
Yeah.
In general sense, is this location, what I'm hearing, is that the preferred, but there may be other locations within the West Town Belt?
So we've been happy to sort of take any development we could take over the years, but when we sort of arrived at a central city park, or we describe it as a central city plaza, so it acts as more than just a skate park. You can sort of open it up to more uses. We had meetings with several different people over the years, and we sort of all arrived at Hinemore Park, Founders Theatre. I know we started at Seeing Red, which is the car park space, but we sort of saw more practical use moving closer into the city and safer.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have a question from Councillor Bunting.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for that. It's good to see the enthusiasm and work. Are you, a couple of quick questions. So if I get this right, you're envisaging something, so it's not a dominant skate park, it's something more like Wellington's waterfront where it kind of merges in with everything else.
Exactly, and then you've got Aotea Square in Auckland City, and it's not a skate park at all, but skateboarding's allowed, and it's probably one of the more used skate spaces in Auckland, with their 70 plus parks.
And look, in all your research, I know we've got the new one at Melville and the Western one, and hopefully Fairfield if we get something done there. And potentially Rotorua, but are you finding that skaters are travelling across town to get to these things?
Absolutely, and not only skaters, you can see at Melville alone, just the huge pickup in foot traffic and people going there, people learning how to skate, scooter, BMX, so definitely people are driving from Auckland, I see every single weekend, to just use Melville skate park, so it's definitely got a lot of interest, and Norton I could imagine will have even more.
And are they driving across town to get there, or are they busing or skating or
biking? Wouldn't say. From the people I know, they'd definitely be catching rides, driving, not so much using the public transport.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I now invite Neil Bruce to join us, please.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Tōku ingoa, Neil Bruce. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Martin, nice to see you. I haven't seen you for a long time. I brought some props because the ideas that I would like to propose to you, I think, might be synergistic with the idea that the Founders Theatre has a future well beyond the present day. I want to thank you for the opportunity because this building is a taonga for many of us, and I know that I've been one who's walked across that stage to receive a couple of degrees, but also as a father, and I've seen my children performing on the stages of this building. I bring with me life experience, my heritage, my whakapapa, and my ancestors, Tihe Māori ora. I also bring as a part of my presentation my experience as an artist, a musician, a teacher, a parent, a grandparent, and a lifelong learner. To kōrero and to challenge, to cajole, to encourage you to awhi and to do the mahi about what I see are the needs and gaps, not just for this city, but for the whole of our country. We live in a paradise. It is a superb place to be. We are living currently at the peak of our civilized world with technological, economic, agricultural, scientific, gastronomic, and cultural developments, which we've never seen before. And I think people can take that for granted. We are at the peak of civilization, but there are too many who disrespect each other. Tēnei whenua, the value of each life and our environment. Yesterday I heard that the father of Grace Mullane died yesterday, less than 2 years after her murder. This mirrors the pattern of my mother, who died 2 years after the murder of my youngest sister. This is not the paradise we're all looking forward to being a part of. And as we hear on the news, all sorts of things happen around us that are far from perfect, but they're things that we can put a stop to, that we can try to do our best to set the record straight. In this regard, I see a repurposed Founders Theatre, FT at this stage, as a key in this drama of life and survival. We, that is the ordinary people of this city, need a space. We need this place where we can grieve, where we can plan, we can share, we can challenge, we can be entertained. We can call behaviours out that distract us from living life in peace together. As part of my presentation, I share a concept to become a unique beacon for ordinary people. Yeah, here in Hamilton. Just as the Greek word hymnos becomes the root of the word hymn, a formal song sung in praise of God or a hero, I would like to propose an acronym for the kinds of artworks and music that challenge egocentric, oligarchic behaviours that distract us all from the stuff of life. The joys and hopes for peace and prosperity. This theme could become the Refounders theme for the next 50 years. This is a her. Not a him, it's a her. It's a challenge. It's a stop trashing our planet. It's a stop terrorising ordinary people. This is an artwork which stands and speaks to us all about the behaviours that we see in our country and in the world around us. The Refounders Theatre, or Founders Theatre, could be repurposed along the lines that Tautu will present and which I support. It could be the home of an international festival of sonic arts. When things get broken or used by, they can be repaired and repurposed. And I would like to present this as a challenge. I've put words together that suggest that a repurposed building could be an international centre for creativity, for healing and the likes. There we go.
Thank you very much for obviously a very heartfelt and thoughtful submission. I appreciate that. I have two questioners, first from Mayor Southgate and then Councillor Bunting. Mayor Southgate.
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome this morning, and thank you for that. In terms of the specifics on that site,
yes.
What I got from your written presentation and what you're saying is looking at something that enhances a number of well-beings. So if it was converted into space where people could play and connect and enjoy green surroundings, as in potentially option 2, is that something that you would...
Option 2?
Are you in option 3?
Option 3.
So you want the building, the whole building, or part?
Absolutely, yes. I think it is there. When you haven't got a bus stop and you're in a rain and it's coming down, you need shelter. Here, we've got the shelter already. We don't need to wait for the bus stop, or we can wait for the bus. It's already here, waiting to be used.
So it needs comprehensive refitting if
Absolutely.
it's to be used.
Yep.
Are you aware of any funded proposals to
I
do
am.
that?
Tautu will present
Tautu?
later on.
Yep. So you're in support
Absolutely.
of their proposal?
Yes, they've got the time to devote to looking at all of those machinations. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Dr. Bruce. Lovely to have you here.
Yeah.
Good to see you again.
Very good, Mark.
Is your proposal site specific? And I guess where I'm heading with this is we've got the Clarence Street Theatre as well. Have you been in talks with them, or is it a possibility for...
No, I see this as bigger and more dynamic than just an area for performance. I think this needs to become a kind of a focus for the city. I mean, it was and has been. Yeah. And I think it still has that opportunity to be repurposed. I think there would be people absolutely envious of our situation, that we've got this perspective on the arts and culture. You know, we haven't begun to look forward. We often are embroiled in the problems that I've outlined. You know, we get distracted from what could be, and I have a feeling that this Founders Theatre could be repurposed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's no more questions. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's most appreciated.
I'm sorry I can't do a wire for you.
No, thank you very much. Kathy Swain, not here. No. Jeff Lewis. Welcome. And have individual submitters 5 minutes, but just do allow time for questioning as well. But you're very familiar with this process, Jeff, so we're in your hands, sir.
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk to you this morning. I can build on some of the themes that Neil has just talked about. I had all this planned out in my head, but I'm guaranteed to start in the wrong place. I went up to Auckland a couple of months ago, the first time I've been in Auckland for about 20 years. And I was just amazed at how many historic buildings there are in the place. And we're not talking about buildings that are 60 years old, we're talking about buildings that are 160 years old, and they're still there. And I thought, well, I am a supporter of option 3, of retaining the Founders Theatre and rehabilitating it over a period of time. My view is that it has significant potential that would be lost if it was demolished. As you know, it was designed by Aubrey de Lisle back in the early 60s, one of Hamilton's leading architects at the time. And it has served the city very well for that period of time. I'm hoping that you will not see it as a competition to the Waikato Regional Theatre. It should be seen as complementary to that. And Hamilton is a growing place. We've got something like 180,000 people now, and give it 20 years, 30 years, we'll have probably 220,000 people, 180,000 people now. The area around Founders Theatre at the moment is a scene of residential development. Tristram Street, Vailu Street, there's hundreds of apartments have gone in there. Also, Frankton has got well over 100. Has got over 100 new apartments coming in the next 18 months. That's a lot of extra population into that particular area. Usually, with facilities like Founders, the cost of running places like that is often in staffing. Personally, I'm prepared to put my hand up and volunteer to swing on a paintbrush or to provide be an usher or anything like that if that helps to bring the cost of running the place down. I would like to say that I do remember interviewing Aubrey de Lisle probably 12, 15 years ago in his house, and he was a very good watercolour painter, and he had on the walls representations of Hamilton buildings, Victorian and Edwardian buildings that had been demolished during the finance company period in the mid-1980s. These great ornate edifices in the last moments of their lives. And I'm just really hoping we don't end up with the Founders being in the same situation. The Founders is not an old building. I would urge you to look to the longer term with maybe a planned rehabilitation of it, maybe over 5, 10, 15 years. It has plenty of room to expand in places. I realise that it had its shortcomings. It was always short of backstage space, always short of loading dock space, but there's a big flat field behind it. So yeah, I would support the retention of the building and its rehabilitation over a period of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. The first question is from Mayor Southgate.
Just in respect to the building, I can see that you retain passion for the existing structure the way it is. Would you see the building being retained, strengthened pretty much as it is, or do you recognise that it would be in a different form? I'm not sure if you were here to hear Jeremy earlier in the morning.
Sorry.
He had a view around parts of the building being able to support the artistic community for practice, for storage, for music and that kind of thing, and having an outdoor kind of theatre offering. What's your view on that?
Well, yeah, it has, as mentioned, it has always been short of backstage space and a good loading dock, and there's plenty of room behind it. Again, looking to the longer term, maybe 8, 10 years' time, funded over a period of time, it has the opportunity to provide this area at the back of there to create a workshop for set production. One of those things which takes a lot of space and you can put skilled people into. That could help the Waikato Regional Theatre too by they wouldn't have to have set production on site, which is a whole industry in itself. Is that
Yes, I'm just wondering if you wanted the building to largely, apart from being refurbished inside or something, largely stay put and be strengthened earthquake, because you're aware that
I understand. Yeah, I have had some feedback from a senior structural engineer in Hamilton, and actually doing what's actually necessary to make it usable as far as its earthquake strengthening is a relatively straightforward job. The Dunning and Thornton report, as you probably know, all that actually said, the seismic report done in 2015, all that actually said was it urged council to come up with a plan to deal with its seismic issues over, as they put it, a practical time frame, and they suggested 12 and a half years, which takes us out to about 2027.
But you're aware that legislation now, as soon as we touch a building to renew or in any way, it does require a much more urgent treatment of this earthquake strengthening? I don't think we have the value of that much time, is what I'm saying.
Right, okay. Right.
Okay, thank you. If Deputy Chair Wilson has a question.
Actually, I will if I could, Jeff. Good to see you. Always good to see you. My question was going to be a little bit that what Mayor Paula asked at the last part. I've read the same report that you referred to. How would you recommend council try to manage the financial consequences if we chose to do the structural work that's required? I don't believe it's as complex as some have purported. But what mechanism? Do you see it through a targeted rate? Do you see it through a community funding, philanthropic? How do you
Well, it
see
could be a combination of those things. I would think the first thing to do would be to get it into a condition that is where it's usable. I mean, things like it's the flying tower and its acoustic properties, things like that, they don't have to be done straight away. Just what's necessary to get it to the point where it's actually usable. And then you can start to market it, really. Find out how to use it in all sorts of ways. Does that help at all? Okay.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Thank you very much for your time, and you'll be totally familiar with this process from your previous concurrent roles. Concurrent roles, yes.
I take my heart pills now. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Is Alan Prestige with us? Is Kathy Swain? Right, I've got advice from the real boss, which is our governance manager, suggesting we break. So how long should we, what do you reckon? 15 minutes. We'll have we'll see if we can bring some people in earlier. Okay, all right. Thank you. Right, thank you. also on Zoom we have Deputy Mayor Jeff Taylor and Councillor Andrew O'Leary. And individual submissions, obviously, take it that your submissions read, obviously highlight the main points and then obviously give us time for questioning. And thank you for being a bit flexible with us, because I know you're speaking slightly earlier than you'd expected, but we're in your hands, sir.
Thank you very much. There are 2 points I wish to make this morning. The first is looking at how we can better utilise the Founders infrastructure for the benefit of the community. They've done some homework in this regard, have some ideas that are being promoted today to this forum, and they're also suggesting that this process should actually be part of the 10-year plan and a much broader and more robust submission process. I support that. I think that the process that we've gone through for this one is the second part of my conversation, in that I think that it's flawed, that to ask me as an individual to try and answer the questions of option 3, which is my preferred option, quite frankly is very, very difficult. So difficult that in the end I gave up. And I suggest that myself and the experience that I have with technology and answering questions, compared with perhaps a number of other constituents in this in Hamilton, they would be even more put off than I was. Fortunately, I've got contacts, so I emailed Martin. I said, Martin, I have a problem, how do I fix this? And his response was, send your information to me direct, which is what I did. I mean, that's not what the process was about. The process was there to enable us as citizens to respond in whichever way we want to a series of options that the community could have a say about. And in my view, that was not possible. The other aspect about it is that I understand some of the prior conversation regarding Founders was about money, and that money couldn't be allocated to that building in any shape or form. And yet, the proposal number 2, which was clearly the proposed option, had no money associated with it. So as a member of this community, I had no measure. I could not understand what the benefit, what the cost was going to be to me as a ratepayer, or to anyone else in Hamilton as a ratepayer, what the impact on us was going to be. And that again is a flawed element of this particular process. I've used, you see in my wording, I've used the word dirty trick, because that's what it felt like. It felt like that I was being manipulated, if you want to use that sort of words, into a particular solution, when my thinking was completely in a different area. And I don't think that's a fair way to go about doing business. So therefore, I support very, very strongly the TOTI approach, that the community be given the opportunity through the 10-year planning process to openly debate the benefits and the disadvantages of that set of infrastructure called Founders, and give us time to put together proper plans, robust plans that we can cost properly and that we can debate appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Mayor Southgate.
The presentation, a little bit confused with your comments about the consultation. So you understand that the consultation, the decision to not restore the Founders was made some time ago. It's already been decided by council. The decision, and you understand that this was about the site, the founder's site within the West Town Belt and what we're going to do with that. Are you saying that giving you 3 options for the site was unreasonable?
No, not at all. I'm saying the 3 options was fine. It was the way in which the answers were being solicited was inappropriate.
Yeah, so would you accept that it's reasonable for council to go out at least with a strongly preferred option for you to consider, but still keep the door open to other funded proposals?
That's okay, but I have I guess a challenge in the way we handle democracy these days. To me, if we talk about that subject, the citizens of Hamilton voted 13 members of their community to represent them. Mm-hmm. And therefore, my opinion is that the community expects the 13 members, in one shape, form or another, to directly communicate with the community on subject matters such as this.
Did you attend the open day?
Which open
One
day?
of the Founders Information Open Days or any of those?
No.
The West Town Belt Open Days?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And it seems that for this particular step of the process, anyhow, that it relied on people having technology skills, first of all having access to a computer, knowing how to use the damn thing to start off with, and we know that, I certainly know from some of my peers, that they go like this when it comes to looking at a keyboard. And I guess that will change over time, but the big question is the community ready for that type of questioning or questioning and answers? It may be one option of many that we should be using in terms of communicating with the community.
Just on a last positive question in respect to the site, you're supporting the TOTI proposal, so you're saying the building in part be reconditioned or refigured and used for activities related to performance, community space, etc. That's your preferred option for the whole building or part of the building? Where do you sit with that?
That's a cost benefit question. I don't have the answers to that question because I haven't seen a cost benefit. But there seems to be a conversation in the community that we are short of some community facilities, and that this piece of infrastructure could be an ideal setting to resolve some of that and enhance the being of our city.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, and hi Ray, thank you for making the submission. Let me just be clear, so are you representing citizens and ratepayers? Yourself today? Okay. Yes. So do you have a point, because I mean obviously you have a very fiscal approach to things, which I appreciate. Do you have a point at which we say, okay, it's a bit too much? Do you have a point in your mind as to how expensive this could be before we say no?
No, it's not for me, it's for the community.
Right.
To me, it's about the community saying, not me. This is not my plan.
Right.
You know, it's like if someone says, have I got a deal for you? They say, oh, but what does the community think about that?
Right.
You know, is the community prepared to invest? Is the community not prepared to invest?
Yeah.
So as long as the process is transparent, the people understand the impact, particularly on their rates, in respect to this, you know, they might be prepared to have a community funding activity going on, and a number of organisations may be prepared to actually fund the whole lot. Okay. We don't know.
So I'm just trying to grasp in my mind.
But we need to go through those steps to determine that.
Yeah, and with your leave, Mr. Chair, just one more question. I'm just trying to grasp in my mind your idea of community buy-in, because as you'll know, you're never going to please the whole community.
Correct.
So how do we know that the community is on board with this? What point do we as elected officials?
That I think is up to the way in which the discussion takes place.
Right, okay. Right, thank you.
As long as it's open and transparent, and people are aware of the facts, and that they can make a solid judgment on the proposal, I don't have an issue with it.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I think reading through your submission, if I'm just clear on this, you're talking about you know, a massive upgrade versus a restoration with an earthquake code. Have I got that right?
So some of the information that I have suggests that that information that's been presented previously has been misinterpreted.
Right.
And therefore, I think it's appropriate that that information be re-evaluated.
Right, okay. At the end of this session, of course, we'll be posing questions to staff in terms of information we want to bring back to us. If there's no further questions, thank you, Ray, very much for your time again and for being with us in your presentation.
And as usual, Martin, very happy to help.
Thank you. I understand Maddie is in the room with us. If you would like to make your submission, thank you very much.
Hello, I haven't been to one of these before, so excuse me if I don't follow all the formalities or anything.
Sure, and just broadly speaking, you know, there's 5 minutes, and just allow us to ask questions. We don't want to be discourteous, but thank you for being with us today.
No, that's fine. So a bit of context from for who I am and kind of where my point of view is coming from. I live within 5 minutes of the park, and I also work within 5 minutes of the park on London Street and live on Norton Road. So I'd find myself using the park or would want to use the park in the future. I'm also thoroughly into sports and the outdoors and seeing people out enjoying themselves. So my submission was in favour of option 2, but I just wanted to go through why I didn't prefer option 1 or option 3. So option 1 is pretty much a wasted opportunity for something awesome we can have in the community. I know it's probably a lot cheaper, as it was said, but there's plenty of green space around as it's part of the green belt, and I don't think we need any just extra fields with the demo of the building. Option 3, I haven't gone into that at length, so I'm not really against it, but I would definitely prefer option 2, and I know that some people may have very strong feelings on option 3 and different uses for the building. I just haven't really thought about that, except an increased cost from some of the other options. And as kind of an engineer or working with engineers, I know that restoration is very expensive, and building new buildings is really expensive over things with maybe developing a new park. Online as well, I think the council highlighted 6 different things that they'd like to see in the park just as examples. So I just wanted to run through them and my point of view on them. So 1 and 6 online were new flat lawn space and natural quiet spaces for enjoying nature. I think there's already plenty of green space, as I've said before, as it's a green belt. So we shouldn't cut out all green space from the Founders Site area, but I think it's extremely important to work into something cool or in aspects of the park. As for the quiet natural spaces for respite and nature, this is covered by nearby parks, and I'd also suggest that you go sit in one of these parks at lunchtime or between 3 and 6 p.m. and see how quiet and respiteful the park is. It's not really a location many would go to relax. New access ways and paths within the park, that would be cool. That was option 2, highlighted by the council. And that can be built really easily into good park design. I think the extra crossings in the area might be a bit difficult with the traffic in that area. So that would take quite a bit of traffic planning and stuff like that. I also think that the point 3, outdoor performance space, would be a waste of time and money. There are much better areas set up for this around Hamilton that already aren't used. I can think of 3 amphitheatres or performance spaces that are underutilised. One at the University of Waikato, which is only used for people to sit and eat their lunches. One down by the Hamilton Lake that I've never seen a show at or seen any shows advertised at or seen people practicing performances. And the one in Garden Place that I've only seen used for maybe 5 events a year. So another would just be a bit of a waste. The other thing, restoration of the fountain, that'd be cool. I think that'd be enjoyed by many people. And parks would be great as well. And then I've just got 5 things that I'd like to see in a park or worked in. So skate park and pump tracks, they've been worked well into other parks around the area like Rototuna and down by the Velodrome in Hamilton East, and they're always used pretty much every sunny day when there's no rain. Basketball courts and netball courts, these are used well at the University of Waikato, and they're always used pretty much all day when there's no rain. and a playground, of course, and maybe as there's more infill in the city centre, like playground or fitness equipment to bring people that aren't just children to the park. Down at the Hamilton Lake, I think they've had a bit of that, and at the university they've got like an exercise area, and that's always used quite a lot as well. That's me.
Thank you. I have questions from Councillor Bunting.
Yeah, Maddie, can you promise me you'll come into every submission rounds, because I found that really refreshing. It was a really good presentation. Thank you. The December 17, we've got Christmas by the Lake, so come and have a look at it. That's at that lake thing, but you're right. I think you're right. It's totally underused. But the guts of your submission is that it's just too noisy for any peaceful sort of haven that a lot of people are painting it at. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I don't start work at 9, I start work at 7 and then leave at 3, so I'm there not even in rush hour times, and it's still full on busy all the time, and I've never once thought myself, that would be a nice place to go and hang out. You know, there's always cars going past, and that might be an issue with some of the playground aspects or kicking balls around and stuff, which is why people already don't use that space, which is why crossings and stuff would be cool, because it would slow down traffic in that area, but it's definitely not a respectful place, I wouldn't say.
No, I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you. Look, thank you very much for your time. Most appreciated.
No worries. Have a good day.
Pleasure. Thank you. Mr. Dornoff, would you like to join us?
Hi, hello. My name's Kevin, and thank you for allowing us to come in and have our say. That's the first thing. That's what democracy is all about. But I do find that this whole process is actually a waste of time. My belief is the decision has already been made of what's happening to that site, and that is that the building will be demolished and the park, Greenbelt, will be put back. But anyway, having said that, my submission is that the council has been negligent in its responsibility to facilities, not just the Founders Theatre, that's only the tip of the iceberg, but with many other facilities in this city. Swimming pools, for a start off, and other facilities. And monuments are built, and then they don't make any money. Classic example, Claudelands. It's still costing ratepayers to have the doors kept open, is it not? Now, what should happen is that the founders should have already been fixed up with proper maintenance done over the years, but it's been neglected and let down into this position it is in now by not doing the proper servicing that needs to be done, i.e. the so-called flying trapeze stuff, or the building itself has had very little work done on it, maintenance-wise. Now, it's just a travesty, really, because that building is quite an intimate meeting place, and I was there when Bill Bailey had a concert there. Fantastic performer, and quite an intimate gathering with people there. He came back a few years later at the Claudelands, because Founders was closed, and it wasn't anywhere near the same atmosphere as it was at the Founders Theatre, and he's just going to demolish it. That's all that's going to happen. Let's get rid of it. And this is happening around the city, even in houses. They take a house off and they put duplexes and multiplexes back up on the same site. And it is destroying the heritage of the city. So my submission is that, again, this is a complete waste of time, but I'm having my say, and that's good, and that the founders should be fixed up and reused. The last time I went to the founders was actually for the Hillcrest High School prize giving, and that was very good, very, very good. So I could say other things. I could say things like, as I said, Claudelands is a noose around the ratepayer's neck. And this new theatre that is proposed is going to be exactly the same. It'll be another noose of money going out to keep the doors open.
Thank you. We have a question. Thank you. We have a question from Deputy Chair Wilson.
Thanks, Kevin, for coming along today and sharing your view. And I was following your logic for quite a while, and then I got a little lost with your constant reference to the poorly performing Claudelands and the incredible drain on the ratepayer. Will you accept that there are activities such as Founders, such as Claudelands, that actually will never wash their face, such as Seddon Park, such as Hamilton Gardens, but they are done and they are funded for the well-being aspects of a community? Or are you saying that every council facility should pay for itself?
In a perfect world, that would be great. So these facilities pay for themselves.
Right.
There are organisations and...
So Kevin, can you tell me, did Founders ever pay for itself?
Probably not.
Yeah. Right. So should we have Founders Theatre?
Yes.
Right. So we should have Founders Theatre, but you don't want Claudelands. I'm just trying to get the thread of consistency with the argument, because actually I'm not necessarily disagreeing with the submitter, but I'm trying to point out that I'm trying to understand your logic, because it seems to be inconsistent.
And I'll certainly allow obviously the submitter, because we've run out of time, but I'll allow you, sir, to answer Councillor Wilson's question or give your view.
My submission is that Founders should be fixed up and kept on used as an asset for the community.
Even though it will make a loss?
Yes.
Okay, that's cool. That's all I needed.
Look, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your presence, and we do appreciate the effort you've made to come in today, and your views about the process is certainly noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
I next have Anne Sial. Is she with us?
Thank you all for allowing us to make a presentation. I'm very honoured to be allowed to do so. We do have some PowerPoint slides. Are we able to show those?
These are all on your diligent The submission is at the end of Diligent. It's not linked to the website.
Oh, it's under presentation. Yeah, it's at the very end under presentation. So just allow us to do our technical stuff, and then we're there. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, we've got it on our machines.
Okay, so everyone can see it, but
we can't project it onto the screen. Oh, there we go.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, that's wait. Yes.
What's there?
And there'll be a button bottom right, like a little screen. I think if you click that, there will. In the bottom, just to the bottom right of the picture.
Oh, okay, that's okay. As long as we see the photo, that's fine. Okay, I think that's fine. Yeah.
just start speaking,
Yeah.
it won't view the way that you expect it
Yeah,
to.
that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just like that,
All
yeah.
right. So this is our drive, our property, and these are Awanui cherry blossom trees bred in Te Awamutu. And for a number of years, we've run a festival here, and we've been overwhelmed by the numbers of people who attend. And it's not just cherry blossoms, if you move to the next slide. It's very much a multicultural event where you've got many different cultures who come together in their national dress, performing their dance, other performances, provide their food, etc. So we think there's a big opportunity for not only for Hamilton but for the wider Waikato in promoting cherry blossoms, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. So what our proposal is you plant the founders' land in the Awanui cherry blossom tree. If you can just move on to the next slide, please. Next slide. Right. No, back up again.
We do have this on video, by the way.
Yeah, okay. So I would put a pond, a modest-sized pond, not as big as this, into the centre of the park where you would get reflections. And also I would add night lights, so it would be an attraction at night. The cherry blossoms bloom for about 3 weeks. The dandelion fountain I would raise a little bit, a few metres on a small hill and create a stream flowing back to the pond there. There's an adjacent park, Hinamoa Park, and I would suggest if we could plant a number of kowhai trees there which flower at the same time, and might be an expensive option, but over time maybe perhaps build a pedestrian cycle bridge across Ross River from the Founders Park through to the Hinamoa Park. The kowhai will represent the Kiwi culture, and the cherry blossoms would represent other cultures, and the bridge would represent the connecting of the cultures together. So the symbolism there. And I think we would use the park in collaboration with sister cities that are being arranged to tie the relationship and promote cultural harmony. So the imagery that this would create would be a very powerful icon for Hamilton and one of its many icons, and it's in keeping very much with the reputation it's developing as a most beautiful city, and together with Hamilton Gardens, etc. And our vision is to create a Waikato-wide cherry blossom festival, which would attract 500,000 visitors in about 20 years' time. So the Northern Hemisphere has many cherry blossom festivals which are hugely popular, pulling in huge crowds. But the Southern Hemisphere doesn't. So I think the Waikato is in the best position in the Southern Hemisphere to create such a cherry blossom festival. It's got low wind, it's got good growing conditions, and much else. And if we interweave that with the Maori culture, which is strong in this area, we create a very strong proposition for overseas tourists to come to this area and come to the country. Anne, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, I think the whole picture of this the park and the whole wide area of the Waikato. So after COVID-19, it has changed the way of living of the society. So what we think is the park can be the heaven of the peace, where the community can escape the buzz of growing city, experience the nature what the community need, and you can experience here with the cherry blossom pink, and also improve their well-being. I think that's the right time for the Hamilton, if we have this plan now, to plant all these cherry trees and build this park. Yeah, this is our way of thinking at this moment.
Thank you. Questions from Councillor Bunting.
Thank you. Lovely presentation.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed that. And thank you for what you're doing at Matangi as well. Just a couple of quick questions around how long would it take for, say, it all went that way, how long would it take from when you planted the trees to when they became functionally blossoming and the likes? How many years gestation, as it were?
Well, they're going to start to look nice after a few years, but they'll continue to improve over a long number of years as they get larger and the canopy develops.
Yeah, yeah. And seasonally, you mentioned about how they have they synchronise with Kowhai, as it were. What time of the year is that?
So it's late September, early October. So we're currently under the process of applying for resource consent with the Waikato District Council for a 16-day festival attracting 40,000 people.
Right. Okay, so just Mrs. Matariki done it. Okay. And finally, your place in Matangi and a lot of these places are in very peaceful places. And we had our previous submitter talk about the noise up and down that park. How would that work? Do you think that would be...
Japan is very successful. They have a lot of their festivals within the city.
Yep.
I think some of those photographs are probably Japan and other countries. So it still creates a haven of beauty and attraction. There is a bit of noise, of course. It's different from what we offer.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's still a very attractive area for people to spend some time.
Interesting.
And for 3 weeks, it'll be quite a joyous festival atmosphere to the place.
So for the cherry blossoms, Japan gave us, a wide idea about the festival. This mostly in the Japan, the cherry blossom is on the road. Right. It's not in the park. They just plant it on the road. And people, when they have a cherry blossom, they park their car beside or somewhere. They can enjoy the whole thing, whole cherry blossom. So I know it's in the city. It's noisy sometimes, car passing, but the people go there, sitting there, have a cup of tea or coffee. They inside, in spirit, it's peaceful.
Yeah.
So that's give people, a kind of way of thinking, just enjoying the nature. Yeah. That's very important for the community.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Question from Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Martin. Lovely to see the both of you again. Thank you for the wonderful work you've done in your property and the value you add to our region. I appreciate it. Turning your mind to the options that we have, your suggestion would not be mutually exclusive to option 3, would it? In theory, if the will of council was to encourage the theatre to remain, there would be no barrier to planting these blossom trees and making that quite a destination.
We don't object to that. And there's probably many other areas of the city which would benefit from cherry blossoms, Hamilton Lake along the river and so forth. So that is one other place that would benefit. And it's good to have different environments. So if there's a building in one environment, that could be fine.
So you would be comfortable with the statement that in fact your strategy would be complementary to any one of the 3 options that are before us?
Yes, although I think if you take the building down, you've got more land for the plantings and the pond, etc. So, but we wouldn't totally object to option 3.
Right, thank you.
Great. Look, thank you very much for your time and your efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. I now invite Mr. Peter H. Boss to join us, please. Welcome, Peter. You're totally familiar with the process. Individual submissions, 5 minutes. But give us, obviously highlight your submission as presented, and then give us time for questions if you would. But you know the system, so we're in your hands.
Yeah. I apologise. I've got a printout, and so Deputy Mayor and Councillor Leary, you won't see the pictures. You can just read the back if you like while I'm talking. It's not really. You can come back to what I've said later, because I'm not reading it all. So hello all. First, I'd like to thank you for the safety improvements on Bailey Street. They work really well, thank you. I'm going to talk about two cities in Germany and a building in Brussels. In Kassel, in the late 1700s, the old fortifications were levelled. After World War II, the city was rebuilt to a new master plan that led to the unnecessary demolishing of lightly damaged buildings. In Osnabrück, like in many German cities, many of the obsolete medieval walls are still in place. After World War II, large parts of the old city were destroyed. Osnabrück's master plan was to rebuild as much as possible, including the destroyed town hall and the city theatre. If you visit the centre of Kassel, you will not see many old buildings. If you visit Osnabrück, you will see a mix of old and new. In Kassel, buildings need to have a purpose. In Osnabrück, what already exists guides their planning. I'm going to talk about Brussels now. In Brussels, there is a building called Old England, built in 1899 as a department store. By the late 1960s, it was needing some love. In 1972, it was vacated, and for close to 3 decades, it did not have a purpose. Would that be possible in Hamilton? Would it be possible to build accessible paths for walking, cycling, to connect the paths through the West Belt, add new street crossings, repair and activate the memorial fountain, and just let the Founders Building be the Founders Building? Like Old England was just Old England for decades, the city walls are just the city walls in Osnabrück. Imagine if the government building in Knox Street had been allowed to be just the old government building in Knox Street. Imagine Founders Theatre in a few years' time. Imagine if Knox Street government building was still in place. In hindsight, was its removal the right thing to do? So I'll finish there. I'll finish with another thank you. The skate park in Melville works really, really well. I think if you drive past there any sunny day or even a wet day, there's just tons of people there. So thank you for that. That's really.
So the question, if I'm just you've used examples in Europe and the UK where structures remain, yes, all right, of antiquity and that. Am I also hearing that if in European city, so are you envisaging that the Founders be somehow mothballed for now, or?
I think that might be a good way of phrasing it. Yeah.
And without asking a leading question at all, do you have a view on the option 3 with regard to the Toti Trust proposal, in terms of we have one submission that's looking at reactivating that particular building?
Oh, I think what I've seen of it looks really good. But yeah, you've got it all. It needs time, and it's up to you if you'll let them have the time to further develop their. I imagine they've worked very hard, and it's been a rush process for them. And yeah, it's up to you if you give them more time to further develop it.
The majority council, by democratic majority vote, the option 2, which is at this point the perceived preferred option of the multi-purpose community park, which retains the Hilda Ross and play space and elements of the the site. Do you have a view on that?
I like the building.
The building.
Yeah,
right,
I do like.
Right.
I think it's in time it'll become iconic. Yeah, I think it has a.
Okay.
It's for our future kids and generations. It'll be treasured.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now invite. I think the next submitter is Saffron. Is she? Thank you. Welcome, and as I've stated, broadly 5 minutes, obviously highlight the main points you wish to make and give us the opportunity for questioning as well, but welcome.
Thank you. Kia ora, kia ora. Hello everyone. I have a handout, you should have that in front of you. I didn't get things sorted to send a presentation through, so I'm just going to continue. Founders Theatre reimagined a vibrant, prosperous centre for the Waikato, creating stronger and more inclusive communities which value everyone's right to contribute. Accessible, safe and inclusive to encourage more people into the central city.
Sorry, I apologise. You have up to 10 minutes because you're from the community living.
Yes.
My apology. As an organisation, you have 10 minutes. So just
10
sorry,
minutes?
carry on.
I'll only take 5. I'm sure
Right.
it's lunchtime.
Fine.
You're
I didn't
all
want
hungry.
to. Yeah. Fine. Thank you.
So, community living. We have supported people with intellectual disabilities in the community for over 30 years. We are governed by a board of trustees led by our CEO, Warren Herring. My personal commitment is to advancing equal citizenship and to draw out the opportunities for more inclusive communities and community capacity building. Founders Theatre, significant. I'm going to start with a metaphor here. We stand on the shoulders of giants. Founders Theatre is a gift from our city leaders to the citizens of Hamilton and is a city asset. We have to take responsibility for the condition and position that Founders Theatre is currently in, and ultimately its fate lies with the decision makers. It doesn't have heritage status, but what it does have and has provided to many generations of Hamiltonians, including myself, are the memories and experiences and connections, the markers of time that are significant to us all. So that's prize givings, graduations, concerts, and performances. Let's preserve and reinvigorate Founders and improve its identity and strengthen the connectivity of citizens and visitors to our beautiful city. Let's ensure that future generations of Hamiltonians also have the opportunity to have the same experiences and to create those lasting memories. Today, I would like to make my case in support of Founders, proposing a diversification of its use. So, obviously, supporting option 3, creating something new from the theatre and area around it, a multi-purpose community site, Founders Hub. Founders Hub, we believe, will provide the most value to communities of Hamilton and provide an abundance of opportunities to adjust the future changes and needs within Hamilton. This will retain an important landmark and its fountains, improve its appearance and use. We can also incorporate into a reimagined design natural quiet spaces, the cherry blossoms, and future playgrounds. Founders Hub will require leadership and management. There would be obviously interested parties invited to form a centre advisory group. A trust will oversee all to the day-to-day management, and Founders Hub should be leased. Founders Hub will provide a variety of community-driven activities with a suite of different programs and services. Obviously, we need to have an amenity and beautification plan, and it needs to also meet LifeMark design principles. It will also require a highly collaborative approach, like-minded organisations, and there's many of us out there, and a number of the submissions that I've seen also support this option. Founders Hub Reimagined can be incorporated as part of a citywide experience trail. Citizens, visitors can weave their way through our streets and the cultural sites of significance that we have in the Waikato. Walking and cycling, of course. To ensure financial sustainability, this needs to be balanced out with commercial activities, hiring rooms, long-term business tenancy, diversifying the risk. The link to council vision in the West Town Belt, the green frame aligns with everything that the Founders Hub Reimagined will provide. People will enjoy it. It's an integrative approach and it has enhanced use. It's a fit for purpose, and it will also have a place-making approach, and what that means is people will remember those special times and come back to those memories and share them with their families. It will be centrally accessible, dynamic, based on respect, where all people are welcome and connected. I see that it supports your Disability Action Plan, the Founders Hub. Older Persons Plan, it meets 13 out of the 19 key strategic objectives that you have. The ones it doesn't meet, obviously, are the River Plan, Ham East and Frankton Plans, because they're obviously not in the same geographic location. So I believe that the investment will be through rates, strategic grants, commercial activities, The annual maintenance should come down once it's refurbished. I haven't prepared a business plan or long-term funding proposal, but in summary, again, support option 3. Thank you for the opportunity to have my say.
Thank you. I have a question from Mayor Southgate.
Yep.
I see your intent to involve many groups working within the one space. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah? Are you seeing the building in its full form that it is now, or would you see it as a refurb, given that there's some earthquake proofing to do?
I think refurbishment.
So you're seeing it as being sort of refashioned into
Yes.
a proper community space. What about the performance aspects? Is that important, or what parts would you look to say?
If that could be incorporated, that would be great, because I think from our perspective, the more people that we have that can be integrated into that space, the better, because then it has that multi-purpose function. So I can't honestly say what that will look like. Would be great to keep it.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Thanks.
Any further questions? If there are none, thank you so much.
That's okay.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm wondering, Neil, from the History Federation, would you be prepared to go next? Are you able to go now?
Well, I was actually going to withdraw speaking rights because I'm with Margaret and
Okay,
Toti.
if you want to go with Margaret, or yeah.
And without extending their allowances, and in the essence of time, what I would have said will be included in what we say there.
Right.
And from what I have seen from the written submissions of my colleagues, the understanding of the presentation up to date is included in that, and I'm sure you all have picked it up. So, with all respect, Martin, I'll withdraw.
Fine, thank
speaking
you.
rights.
I'll
And pass over to
invite
Toti.
Margaret and Toad to come. We'll have a quick 5 minutes, but I'm going to invite Margaret to come up and be ready. All right.
Yes, yes, yes.
Shall I see? Taylor and I welcome former Mayor Margaret Evans in her capacity as the representative of the Theatre of the Impossible Trust. Margaret, you may just wish to introduce your colleagues and then we're in your hands.
Thank you, Councillor Martin and other councillors and whoever's looking. Firstly, this is, Neil is the co-author of this. If you look at the submission, Kurdigan. Then we've got Mike Angelo, who is from Peddlethorpe the Architects, and Kaiwan, who's also from Peddlethorpe the Architects, who have been working with us on this. And shall I launch straight into it? We begin with showing you a photograph from the year the Founders opened, and we think it's important to understand that it was a group of citizens who wanted a new theatre wanted a theatre for the city that began the building program for Founders. They raised about $250, which was a huge sum in those days, and that covered about a tenth of the cost of the whole project. And I say that because there's a little bit of urban rumour that's not actually quite right, in that lots of older people think that the people raised the subscriptions to build the whole theatre. In fact, they didn't. They were the initiators, subscribed a huge sum in those days, but it was the council that responded in partnership that built the theatre and then took over its operation. So can't help but show you that lovely little bit. Also, it's not shown up there, but one of our squirrels, and we seem to have recruited a lot of squirrels over this project, found an Institute of Architects magazine in our own library, which has got some marvellous records, and it confirms the sum of money that was raised. But I think the fact that this featured in an article in the Institute of Architects magazine shows how significant it was nationally. And it was not only loved by the people of Hamilton, but it was loved by the nation. Important point. Now, if we flick to the next, we, in putting together this proposal, have considered most of the council's policy documents, and we've tried to frame this so that it fits with that, because we know you are now the council, and these are your intentions. And they are usually pretty well based on consultation with the community, so that we want a project that fits in 2020 for the future. So whenever we start talking about stuff, please take it into account that we have looked at these documents, such as placemaking, a draw card for the community, the whole issue of well-being. So if you look at the next slide, I have to say we are so indebted to Peddlethorpe because they have really done so well to... can you read that print, or is it just my eyesight?
My eyesight.
And it's interesting, last night I spent a bit of... There it is there. I spent a bit of time going through the... There we are. I spent a bit of time going through the other submissions, and even though our concepts did spread around the community a bit like confetti, it was fascinating to me how many individuals and other people shared the same concepts as a hub. This building can be resurrected, and we've used the term restored and rejuvenated as a community hub, and we've said for arts, music, culture and heritage, which in fact incorporates all of the well-beings and just about anything else that you can think of. So that is what we went to Peddlethorpe with the request for. We need to explain that Peddlethorpe includes Mark DeLisle, who is the son of Aubrey DeLisle, who was the original architect of that building. So that's why our pathway led to them. Mark has found Aubrey's original plans. So we think we're a little bit ahead of the 8 ball because we had professional information that perhaps some of the other professionals engaged by council over the last 5 years may not have had. We think that's quite important. Okay, next. Here we are. Our concept with rejuvenation, as I've said, is about wellbeing and sustainability. It's about the 1919 West Townville Management Plan, and it is about the essential seismic retrofit with a proposed new skeleton to support the existing structure with the new purpose. Now, if I can just bring in what I've learnt from Mike and the team over the last couple of months, there has been immense progress made in terms of earthquake proofing, not just here in New Zealand, post Christchurch, but internationally. It has yet to be finally decided what form that will take, but we are very confident that a state-of-the-art can be achieved economically. Council's own reports suggested somewhere around about 3.5 million upwards for the seismic protection. We haven't got a figure yet, but we've certainly passed those figures on to Mike and his team, and we are hopeful within a few months that we can be much more specific, if you give us time. The next shot shows you the original drawings of the founders, and it's quite useful to look at that because it then gives you a feel for the next step. Take to the next one. And I might add that Pedalthorpe have the capacity to give us a complete 3D model, which will be very useful if you encourage us to take the next few steps. Now, this is where we get down to the nitty-gritty. If I begin with the West Wing, we love that term in current non-Trumpian the United States. The West Wing is the bit in yellow, and the top half of that is only less than 2 decades old. We call that the West Wing. That can be pretty well operational almost immediately, and we see that as potential for community offices, shared space, hot desking, rehearsal rooms. It's really a pretty marvellous facility, and it's part of the ones that Jeremy Mail has suggested be retained. We think it needs to stay. If you then come to the blue piece, that's the current stage and tower, fly tower area. We've had discussions about things like the need for exhibition space. So many people talk about, we've got all these beautiful taonga, but including in the basement of the museum, plus in private collections, and not enough space to see them. I certainly come from New Plymouth originally, and I've always loved TART, Taranaki Art, where they have relationships with all the schools. And every month there is a new exhibition of the kids' work, and I love that. Down at the East Wing is an area that's workshop potential. Mike and Co also tell us that if there was any need for kitchen expansion, because there's some ideas about that, that's essentially well plumbed with stuff like that could be an option. Then coming to the main auditorium area, it was designed to be divided by a big curtain, but the information we've been given by a whole range of performance and music experts is if you're going to have a space for an auditorium, you don't need more than 500 or 600 seats. That's the international model. So that can very conveniently be kept as a meeting space, with the rear area converted into meeting, again, spaces, could be all sorts of offices whatsoever. Finally, the gallery area where the hōteri is, again, that's a marvellous space already there, absolutely fantastic for gallery. And then the restaurant cafe, we've had so many people say to us, wouldn't it be lovely to have an adult bar, an adult cafe where people could come maybe to play cards, listen to some quality music, whatever. That, of course, also is a revenue earner for the rest of the building. Flip quickly to the next one. That's the same as the first floor, but that is the second level, and you can see there how the various levels are created. Flick to the next one. This gives you the exterior.
Cross-section.
The cross-section, sorry.
So on the right-hand side in blue is the exhibition space, potentially on 5 levels.
See that?
And the meeting space across from the auditorium near the middle in the grey part would be around potential 3 levels of meeting spaces and function areas. And the auditorium being rehearsal space, meeting space, and really open to imagination. And we're talking about kitchens in that area as well to facilitate it.
Next one.
We're nearly there.
Which is a cross-section also.
Through the other way. So on the right-hand side is the community offices space, workshops in pink, the 5 odd stories in the middle. Again, the flyer tower being an issue, internal structure, we're looking at using that to hold the building back in shape.
Which is why we've said restoration and rejuvenation, so that the fixing up can be also part of the redevelopment for future uses. Next one.
And the next one can go quite reasonably quickly, but it's really looking at the same spaces from the exterior of the building with a 3D model.
But I think it's important from the West Town Belt perspective and also from the other submitters, including the Cherry Blossom people, placemaking does ensure that a building connects with its area. And one of the ideas that has been suggested to us is tucking on an outdoor stage behind where the existing stage is. Other people have looked at the cafe and seen how that can open up and connect with gardens and, of course, Hilda Ross's lovely fountains. The storytelling element, lots of people have talked about storyboards, and I certainly love that as contemporary art because it's reasonably ineffective. It has pictures, which so many of the young love, and you can quickly tell a range of stories. 2 that have been mentioned to me in the last week are the story of J.W. Ellis of Ellis and Burnand. He was the mayor of Frankton who became the first mayor of the joined city where Hamilton and Frankton came together in 1917. And the other one, of course, is Frank Jolly, after whom Frankton is named. And again, one of the Totty favourites, which I think you all know about, is the founding mother, Whakaotarangi, who brought the Tainui canoe to our shores. And really, a final note from us is to say that when we talk about founders, we understand tangata whenua are also founders, so that incorporates them. What are we asking for you? We're asking you to give us time. Last slide.
That's the last slide, yeah.
Yes.
Did we put that on?
We can go right through to the end.
Go right through. Oh, there's the...
It's the milestone.
Yeah, there we are, there we are.
That's it.
We're saying that we can have much more information for you by March when you move into your draft 10-year plan. That's also your draft first-year plan. Then by June, when you sign off your 10-year plan, well, it's the community's 10-year plan, we're saying we can be part of that. Importantly, we need that time because we've talked to a range of local funders, including significant funders, and their financial year operates alongside councils. So this current financial year, there's very little chance of getting the sort of support that we believe is necessary. But if we flow into their July to the following June 2021-2022 financial year, we are much more likely of success. We have put a ring around $10 million. This is one of those projects that, as we jokingly said to Mike, you can spend as much as you want. Once you start retrofitting, it's about the quality of the stuff. It's whether you want new carpet or new chairs or whatever. But we are hoping that this will be a community-driven project that is strongly supported by the council.
Thank you, and I also thank you very much for that presentation. I'm obviously wish to move to question time. The first question I have is from Councillor Bunting, then followed by Mayor Southgate, and there may be some on Zoom as well. But Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Yeah, look, I only have one because I could ask questions all afternoon. Just so I can get my head around it, all this is within the existing shell of the building, is that right? So there's no extra floors or...
Bearing in mind, there's always need for flexibility. And I mentioned indoor, outdoors, and there's got to be proper engineering stuff, but we have got the original plans, remember that.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting
and
to
very
see
clever professionals.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I have.
Mayor Southgate.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the amount of work you've put into this, and certainly a very visionary prospect. I'm going to talk about some of the harder stuff. You've suggested $10 million. That's for the entire project as we see here, depending on the quality. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
So you're expecting to fundraise $10 million, or how, apart from what we have in the budget for demolition, how would you see that money being found?
The same way money for projects is always found, by selling a concept, a popular concept, to the key funders. And as I said, we've already done some testing of the marketplace, and the response has been favourable. And can I explain? Hamilton is not just known, now nationally recognised, as a beautiful city. It's long been recognised by anybody that knows as a cultural city. It's the place that has spawned so much music, performance, art, etc. And so the locals like that.
So I'm just curious, because, you know, we're under constraint with the LTP this year like never before, but in terms of, you'd expect a council to consider some contribution in their LTP, and you'd look therefore to go out to the wider community to fundraise for the capex to do the project, some of the capex to do the project. Is that what you?
Absolutely.
And thanks. And in terms of OPEX, because that's often the bit that's forgotten about, other people have talked about potentially trusts holding it in their interest and running it, a bit like Momentum Trust does for the new theatre. Is that something that you would see as a useful model?
We certainly see that the operating model should be a community charitable trust. We think it's essential that it not only involves representation from the users, but also people that understand the mechanics of these things. And if I can give an example, lots of people stopped using the Founders Theatre because the prices went up. At the moment, we have issues even with the Meteor, which used to be able to accommodate everybody, but lots of groups cannot afford to hire current spaces. There is a constant balance between making sure that your operating overheads, and I'm looking at Sean, who knows this recipe well, your operating overheads, what you can get in income, and then annually what you can fundraise. Of course it's a long haul, but then I'm like one of the speakers earlier today who made the point, you know, you don't expect a bridge or a street to raise revenue. Facilities like this are always going to need the support of the local council and the local community. That's the story for how many thousand years?
Oh, no, I get that. I'm just, within the current constraints and proposals that we have coming to the LTP.
We are very well aware. And the national constraints post-COVID.
Yeah, well, post-COVID.
Money does not grow on trees.
That's right. We haven't got it in our back pocket, I agree. But I love vision, so I'm always open to considering. This was about the site. This wasn't and this is the point I made to Ray earlier. The consultation was done on the site. We never proposed to reopen a theatre. That decision was made prior. But what you're saying is that this isn't a theatre, this is a multi-community space instead. So it's a total repurpose.
Total repurpose.
So you're not trying to protect the original theatre, you're trying to repurpose.
Repurpose. Can I also add one other thing there, bearing in mind it's linked with the site. We have had suggestions made to us that it would be good to see the council slow down Ross Trevor Street in that little bit there, maybe even ban cars. So people that have talked to us are thinking beyond the building.
Last question. I know the bell's just gone ding, but
no,
just...
sorry, I apologise. Just you don't know that's fine.
Okay. Oh, I took the.
I would never. I would no. Final question.
No, just in terms of you talk about time till March, but in fact this is hearing people's views, but you're aware that the decision doesn't get made to the LTP anyway, so you'll have time to
Absolutely.
So there's no more additional time. You're just going to bring a worked-up concept for the LTP.
We would love you to put maybe even the site plan in your draft 10-year plan, so that then the wider consultation that council does, people can actually have now a specific. We're interested in that because just in the last month we've had people come to us saying, hey, that sounds great, can we become involved? And the end use of this is what's hugely important.
Okay, so you're asking us to reconsider our favourable option, which is the enhanced space.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're in a certain constraint, and I'm aware that Mr. Deploy is following you. But thank you so much. I've got questions from Councillor Wilson. Obviously, I also emphasise that this does not preclude the council coming back to Toti, obviously, for clarification. Absolutely. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Marty, and I can assure you I won't take any more time than Her Worship the Mayor. Can I first start by saying thank you for all the work you do. Margaret, the city will be thanking you for years to come for your dedication, so thank you. I've got 4 or 5 questions, and brevity will be needed when answering, if possible. From your huge experience, is one council bound by a decision of another? Because there's been a lot of commentary or narrative that we'd already made the decision to bold founders. Is it your understanding that one council couldn't come along and change its mind?
That is actually for you to decide.
Thank you.
But I think history tells us we know stuff today that we didn't know yesterday.
Great.
So a thoughtful consideration is what wise leaders do.
Thank you. Is your opinion, would your suggested project detract from the Waikato Theatre plan for the south end of town?
Absolutely not. And I think we made that clear in our original submission in June. We think that this will enhance, because everybody's saying in the theatre scene, rehearsal space. We love the idea of growing more interest in the theatre, and that can often be done at grassroots, community level. As a final example, I've talked to Susan Trodden from Orchestra Central, and she makes the point that there is some concern amongst music people, and Neil probably thinks this too, that the young today are losing sight of the importance of the classics. And if you can have some community level stuff which might reintroduce them to the beauty of the violin or Chopin or whatever, that's got to be a good thing.
Great. Margaret, there's been some commentary that the only funds council has is funds that we've currently put aside for demolition. It would be not unreasonable to assume that we would be willing not only to allocate those funds, but any funds that we would have put aside or will put aside to fulfil any one of the 3 options that we've gone out to consult.
My preference would be to let us do what we can to raise the CapEx, because we live in a time when people are more likely to give to a charitable purpose, unfortunately, than give to the council. However, I think OPEX is different. Our view is that this building should remain in the ownership of the council, and therefore that landlord responsibilities would remain with council. So there would be an ongoing cost to the council on that. But just take it, we're enthusiasts. Most of us aren't bad at raising money from people because we ask them.
Last question. We've had some wonderful ideas flow through from this round of consultation. Is your proposal, would your proposal actually enable some of these complementary strategies to be implemented?
Yeah. I've already made arrangements over here for at least one. You're absolutely right. It was with great joy I read those 500 or something submissions last night, and I thought we are on the right track. This is what the people of Hamilton are thinking, and if they can all come in, fantastic.
Thank you. That was all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have one question from Councillor Angela O'Leary. Welcome, Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Margaret and team, for a great presentation. Just want to confirm on your last comment, and I'll have questions for staff when we get to that point. But in our verbal submissions report, it actually states that 84% support option 2, which is not the option that you're presenting to us. So can you just tell me why you believe, after having a look at the submissions, that that's not accurate?
Because I think my reading of the submissions was that they were all talking about the sorts of activities that we're talking about. They talked about placemaking, they talked about storytelling, they talked about music, they talked about art. And I think that they didn't know about the Toti proposal. So that's one of the reasons we're suggesting that give it a burst in your next step of consultation, and then we'll know.
Okay, great. That's clarified that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. To the Toti Trust, and also I'm aware of the NZ History Federation, so obviously as a support, so combined submission, but I just want to thank you for your presence, and we have certain constraints in terms of this process, and obviously very clearly Council has the ability to obviously come back to you if there's any further ongoing clarifications. So to former Mayor Margaret and her team, and all of you, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would now like to invite Mr. Rudy Deploy, who's been waiting. We're sorry, a wee bit behind time. If you'd like to join us, sir. Right, this is an individual submission, broadly speaking 5 minutes, but obviously give us time for some questions as well. But obviously, thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I acknowledge the Chair, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, the councillors in attendance, personally, and those by electronic means. My submission will probably sound a little bit different, but that's because I'm different. Now, there was an old man who owned a priceless bird, which he kept in a beautiful cage. And there was a young man who had befriended this old man. The old man grew confident that this young man could be trusted. There arose an occasion that the old man had to go away for a few days, and he asked the young man to take care of the bird whilst he was away. As it happened, while the young man had to open the cage to put fresh seeds and water, the bird escaped and flew away and sat on a very top of a tree. The young man was frantic, and he went searching for a ladder long enough to reach the top of the tree. Some of his friends said, "Let it fly, let it fly." And while others said, "Let it die, let it die." He found a ladder long enough, and he rescued the little bird despite the advice from some of his friends. So today, I want to say to councillors that the Founders Theatre was put in your care by the people who elected you. There is an expectation from them that you will try your best to protect our assets and our wonderful prized buildings. So today, I, as a resident of Hamilton, come to you cap in hand, and I'm pleading for you to assist us folks who want to save the Founders Theatre. I'm deeply concerned that Council has adopted a 3-option submission process for the Founders Theatre. There is no fairness in that. There is enough evidence that there was no reason for the Founders Theatre to have been closed. None of the reports that came to Council suggested that. This old lovely theatre, where I actually had my graduation, that's some time back, needs someone to just love her today. I'm not going to enter into a debate about a new regional theatre. I only want to talk about the Founders. There is this mystical figure of 20 million for the revamp that gets thrown around, and it's just not true that it would cost that much for the theatre to be up and running again. I attended a presentation by Warren Jones, who has done an estimate for earthquake strengthening and a total revamp of the theatre. When I say revamp, I mean revamp. I mean everything. New sound equipment, lights, acoustic panels, new pianos, smoke curtain, etc. The cost, 2.9 million. So let's say there will be a big blowout of costs, and it would be double that, it would be 5.8 million. What a bargain. Nowhere close to the 20 million. I was a councillor back in South Africa and was on the oversight committee of the Johannesburg City Theatre. Actually had 3 theatres in it. And we made, in order for it to be economically viable, we made it a receiving theatre, which is a theatre that does not produce its own productions, but has people come in and do the productions, and they could get a share in the takings. That proved to be a good working model and removes the burden of productions away from the entity. So I'm pleading with you councillors to give the old girl a new lease of life. Let us do the right thing. Let's restore her. Give her back her dignity. Let's protect our heritage for a change. How about we restore it and have a grand opening night with a world-class ballet production? I have such a desire for a grand opening. Ladies in long gowns, men in their tux. See, I'm an old-fashioned romantic. I grew up in the entertainment industry and I just love it. I support the elements in the Toti submission and have had sight of Andrew Bidder's submission and believe that we should form that as a basis of where to go with the Founders Theatre. So, Mr. Chairman, let us ignore our friends who shout, "Let her fly, let her fly," and the ones who say, let her die, let her die. Let's get along a very long ladder and see how we can save this old lady. I thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Rudy. And I asked this slightly tongue-in-cheek. What happened to the bird? Did it live forever, or and if it lived forever, how much money did they spend keeping it alive forever?
When you appreciate something, you spend the money. If it satisfies the community and it is a service to the community, there are innovative ways of doing it. So I always see there is a communication between council. There's a part that they deliver, and then there's a part that the community will deliver. Right. And we've heard from Margaret that there seems to be overwhelming interest in actually protecting this old bird.
Good.
Theatre.
Did you just call Margaret an old? No, okay, right. Okay, I'm being cheeky. The 20 million you said was wrong, but Margaret's come up with a reasonably strong proposal that says 10 million. What do you say to that amount?
I say with the evidence that they probably have at this point in time, that seems to be correct.
Okay.
I'm basing my figures on what Warren said. And that needs to be investigated.
Right.
And I think that's the right thing to do. See which ladder will fit the street.
And I've just been Googling is it the Joburg Theatre you were talking about, the same one? So they've now moved into more of a corporate model. The council seems to have divested it to something similar to what Momentum is doing with the other theatre trust. Is it?
Yeah, what they've done is they've had a change in the leadership in that theatre. Yeah. And they've gone into another model. I'm not sure whether they're actually making money at this point in time. The older model, definitely the theatre's actually made money.
Thank you. Good luck to your bird.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Southgate.
Thank you. You'll be aware that this consultation isn't about restoring the theatre for a theatre's sake, because that decision has already been made by prior councils. Do you support, so I'm not quite sure, are you supporting the Toti vision, which is a rework of the site, or are you saying that the theatre should just go back no matter what? Because that's outside of the scope of this submission period.
I think it would be foolish to just say there is only one model. Yeah. I think one has to interrogate exactly what is on the table and what is possible, what is feasible, what is manageable, and what is affordable. Having those criteria met, that's the way that we should go forward. And I urge council to actually really endeavour to find all of these different models, have a good look at them. Let's give the people of Hamilton an opportunity to engage. Let us give people the opportunity to redirect. And I hear you, good Mayor. I hear what you're saying about previous council decisions. They are not cast in cement, and they can be overturned. A new council can certainly come up with a new direction. That's just how it is. That's just the law.
No further questions. Thank you. Thank you very much for your submission, and certainly appreciate your time. Right, colleagues. As I understand it, we've come now to the end of the hearings process of this meeting. We now will start to go around the room with the questions that we have of staff that will help inform their report and summary into the LTP process, because obviously this now goes back to the full council LTP process. And I think I'll start with Deputy Mayor Taylor. Do you have any questions you want of staff?
No, I don't actually. I'm feeling pretty clear about proceedings. I'm absolutely fine, thanks.
Fine. Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two things I'd like the staff to bring back in the deliberations report. One is some clarity on the Creative Waikato request or submission in terms of what that footprint might look like, and if or how that aligns with the Toti proposal. And the second one's just a question on, which may require further work for the deliberations report, on the staff report. So I'm on page 14 of the diligent, and I'm on point 19. And it says of the 505 have your say submissions, 84% supported the council's preferred option, which was option 2, remove and create a multi-purpose park. But then down in point 20, and I'm aware that we received, and the report says, we received a number of letters and emails that were outside of the Have Your Say online submission. So I guess my question is, first of all, does point 19 in terms of the 84% support option 2 include those emails or letters sent through? And if not, can the deliberations report actually include those in the percentages? Because I don't believe there's any, I don't believe that just the have your say is the only way that you can have your say when we consult. Was that clear enough?
Do you want to?
Councillor O'Leary, it's Tracy Lowndes here. So I ran that engagement part of the process. So your first question, no, the 84% just refers to the 505 submissions that were received through the Have Your Say portal. And we have done some analysis around the sort of themes that emerged through the 22 direct emails and letters. But we can make sure that that's nice and clear in the deliberations report. I'm not sure that we'll...
Thank you, because it does say in your report in point 20 that most of those favoured retaining the building. So that would assume that that's an option 3. So I think that those percentages need to actually reflect all of that. So you've acknowledged that. That's
okay,
great.
Sure.
And just one other thing, in my reading of the submissions, and I questioned Toti in terms of them saying that they believed the majority of public submissions through the comments in the submissions favoured, I guess, an option 3 and favoured retaining the building in some form. And I would agree with that in reading submissions. So is there a way to do some kind of analysis on the actual comments?
Councillor O'Leary, it's Sean Murray here. Look, we'll have a look at that and check that analysis and include that in the final report.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you, Mr Chair. That's all I had. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Wilson.
I see my good friend Bunting is in front of me.
Oh, yeah. I'm just going around the. I'm just going to go around the room, and yeah, if that's okay. Yeah, Councillor
Thanks,
Wilson.
Chair Martin. Look, I have 3 areas that I'd like staff to come back to us. The first being there is a lot of narrative around this table today about actually council's already made a decision, and we were asking feedback based on these 3 options. What I'd like staff to do is just come back and verify the legal status of any previous decision of council and whether or not we have the right to review that. I'm mindful that there's move afoot for council to revisit former decisions of council, even to rename roads. So my understanding is that, in fact, we're not bound by any previous decisions. So I look forward to that confirmation. The second thing is I'd like to get a clear understanding from staff. Again, there seems to be a narrative that the only funds that are possibly available to provide any whether it's OPEX or CAPEX, is that of the cost of demolition. I don't believe that's the case, and one would have assumed that if we've gone out to the public with the 3 options, which all involve demolition but also require us to fund either those 3 options, including planting of quite a sophisticated garden, whether or not those funds would be available to make a contribution to either CapEx or OpEx in the light of, say, us embracing option 3. And my third question is, I'd like staff just to re-look at whether or not, if we retained the theatre, basically in line with the Tuti's outline, whether or not we could incorporate some elements of option 2 in terms of the Blossom Festival concept, the planting, and a more activative park area that would be complementary for those living in the apartments nearby. So I guess I'm asking for a brief summary of bake my cake and eat it too scenario, where I get a bit of both, which I quite like.
Thank you. Councillor Van Oosten.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, submitters, for the time and effort that you've put into all of your submissions, and to staff for being able to put all of that together into the report that we have and future reports. And thanks to my colleagues for their questions, mighty good ones. I am new to the decisions around the theatre and its future, so need to have some good understanding of the problem that we're looking to solve. So those have been well documented, and the options that we think of today and that are presented aren't all mutually exclusive. So I think having an understanding about how they might be blended together to form something else and options would be helpful from staff. I think it would be helpful to have an understanding specifically about the ongoing cost of a TOTI proposal to Council in terms of both its operating, maintenance and supporting of a community of use. I'd also like to have an understanding about how the time frame that TOTI proposes might impact our long-term plan decisions as well, and how in the event that option 3 or the TOTI proposal is supported, how that time frame might be able to be afforded them in order to be able to explore the funding opportunities. And I guess also the remark that Margaret made regarding support of their idea had the public a better understanding of it. So that, yeah, that's it from me. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Chair Martin. What I would really like that's come out of these submissions and that would help me in my decision making in the future is some noise monitoring of that area, similar to what we did with the Governor's Green. It's reasonably easy to do because that would help me with my decision as to whether we go outdoor or indoor, the feasibility of the cherry tree thing, notwithstanding what these submitters said. It can be done in noisy places, but it would make a difference to me with regards to the outdoor performance areas. Is that, Sean, do you know if, I don't know if it's your go, but did you have anything to do with the Governor's Lawn one when we were talking about that?
No, look, I don't have any background in the noise on the street, but we'll load that into see what we can find out. I think that would always be a part of any option 2 plan that will ultimately be developed, bearing in mind that option 2 is just a concept.
Absolutely.
And there's no formal or hard and fast development proposal for that, but that we would certainly signal if we go down that track.
For sure.
That the noise issue needs to be addressed.
Yeah, then I'd have
And
a clearer
understood.
picture. Thank you, I appreciate that. Also, the theatre seat to population ratio. I know this sounds a bit sort of technical, but a couple of our submitters talked about our population growth in the future. And I know there's a common narrative around at the moment saying that once the new theatre's up, Clarence, Meteor, etc., we'll be well served with theatre seating. But how long will that last until we have to build some more? Of course, we've got Claudins and all that sort of stuff. So, Sean, you'll have the numbers at the moment, won't you, on theatre seats per population, I presume, around those lines?
No, I don't specifically, but I don't actually believe that the population base determines the optimum size of or number of seats in a specific theatre.
Okay.
If you look at theatres around the world, they tend to go up to a certain size, irrespective of the population base. So it's often more driven by the nature of the event or the show or the performance, and what is a good space for that particular type of genre, whatever that may be.
And I guess the reasoning for my questioning in that respect is that if the Toti concept is 500 seats, it's about the same as Clarence Street. So you'd have two of the same size, regardless of their nature. So I'm just sort of thinking, is there a simple formula that says we have a population of 250,000, therefore it's ideal to have this many performing seats?
I would say the answer to that is no, but let me double check.
Would you mind?
Yep.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, that's pretty much all I need to find out. Thanks, Martin.
Mayor Southgate.
Thank you. Just put my glasses on. Thank you. Some of the questions have been listed. I guess I'm interested in a couple of things. Sean, given that we've seen some indicative design, not detailed design, but indicative design from Jen about option 2, you know, with some terracing for seating and outdoor theatre, etc., reuse of the dandelion fountains as a potential splash pad, etc. And it looks really interesting. Just getting some greater clarity that if that was to prevail, and 84% were keen, if it was, what were the costs? Because we do need to have honest and relative costs for all options. So, you know, even if they're indicative, we haven't gone out to any detailed design. So the costs of that, certainly share Angela's request, or she's gone, Angela's request around the Creative Waikato proposition, what that would look like, because I understand it uses part of the building, the bits that you saw, and some was talking about storage and some performance elements. So I'd like to understand that better and the costs. The other thing I'd like to understand is, because, you know, the thing that just makes me nervous is cost, given what we've got coming up, councillors, in our LTP, which is lots of projects with no money. Cost at the moment, just to refresh us, to bring it to the table for our LTP discussions, the cost of keeping it, maintaining it in its closed state, plus the demolition costs and putting the ground back to basic ground or whatever. So we've got a base cost because it's costing us to keep it, it's costing us to demolish it, so we know what quantums we're dealing with. That would be helpful to me. And get some sense somehow about if we were to provide more time, and that's if and only, when would it be fundable in the LTP? Are we looking at something that's potentially doable in years 3, 4, 5, 6? I don't know. I don't have a sight line across that, because I doubt very much we're going to have the money in years 1 or 2. So just be interested in that. Just need to make sure that our museum and other exhibition spaces would be comfortable with something that complements them, we wouldn't want to get into a competition situation with our own museum, of course, but I agree there's obviously lots of treasures that are hidden that we could bring out. The other thing is that in talking about the theatre in the last part of today, we've almost forgotten already that we had a request around skate facilities, and I'd like to understand what that would look like. I understand they're not looking for your full skate bowl, but they're looking for skatable elements. They mentioned Christchurch, didn't they?
Yeah, Wellington.
Wellington, thank you. Yeah. So I'd like to understand a little bit more what that concept would look like. Cherry tree planting, yes, I need to understand there again. There was the opportunity to put trees in, which is one thing, and then there is ponds and other things, because everything needs to come to the LTP with some dollars alongside it. Otherwise, it's going to be really impossible for us to balance. And the last thing is, with the 84% of people who were favourable to option 2, I've been reading through some of the submissions. I'd like to pull together have a sense, not just of the overall quantum, all right, it's 84%. I would like to understand what the key elements within those 84% of submissions were, because that will give us a sense of what people value the most within a potential redevelopment. And then there might be a way to pull together some of those threads. And a question that I wouldn't mind getting off Toti in the next period of time would be, if it had to be a pared back offering than the full vision that you have, if it was unaffordable to the city to do that, what would you look at in terms of a pared back approach? Pardon? Stage. Well, that's what I need to understand and see some clarity about. Well, it would be really good to get more detail about that, so that we've got flexibility and options. A lot of projects coming up in the 24th, 25th. So thank you, and look, thank you very much to all the submitters. I think it's really special that you love that place so much. We love the West Town Belt too. We love all parts of the West Town Belt. Oh, last question. Sorry, Sean. There was Jen Parlane talked about the possibility of coinciding some street and access improvements for that intersection, that Tristram Street intersection. There's some budget in there. I'd like to understand more about that, and because you know, if you could do things together, you'd do them together and get better pedestrian and connectivity of that intersection, whatever that. It's a while since I've seen it. Thanks. And again, thank you everyone for the time that you've taken and the passion you have for our city. Can't fault any of you in that regard. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I probably most of the questions I'd asked have already been stated. With an open mind, obviously, Councillor Van Oosten raised the issue of obligation on council. In terms of a decision process, unless council has signed a legal contract, and for example, council's gone on a journey with Momentum in terms of the Waikato Regional Theatre, there would be very clear processes of a good faith, goodwill contract there. But unless there's been a legal contract, like any incoming government, they can totally do a 360-degree turnaround. They're the absolute democratic authors. That's what a new council is of their own destiny. So then I just want to clarify, and Amy very helpfully put me back to the very helpful historic summary on Diligent of the Founders Theatre history as distinct from the Waikato Regional Theatre proposal. And the last sort of resolution I can get, and this is where I just want Sean and the staff to sort of track us from there, there was, which basically, and it was an amendment moved by O'Leary Pascoe, came a substantive motion on the 12th of December 2017 in the previous council. It talked about a creative community hub, a discussion at the Founders Theatre, and a report back by the 30th of March 2018 refrained from the demolition of any part of the building until the consultation is complete and the business case has been reported back to council. So from there, I'm just wanting to get a timeline in terms of the issue is, are there any specific resolutions of council historically that have indicated that the Founders Theatre was going to be demolished as against, option 1 and 3, West Town Belt, that type of stuff?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I think it's really important that people understand there has been no decision by council to demolish the Founders Theatre at all. There was a point in time where we were asked as management to put up a proposal to council as to whether or not to proceed with demolition, but that wasn't accepted, and the question of other alternative use and so forth was also raised, and it was ultimately agreed to give things a little bit of time, which has led to the process we're in right now. So it is important to remember that there has never been a decision made to demolish Founders Theatre.
So for the benefit of colleagues that are not able to be present, I'd like you to just magnify glass that bit so that we're absolutely clear of the current status in terms of, resolutions, and that is a very helpful answer. The other thing I think Councillor Wilson, Councillor Pascoe's touched on it is the issue. I just want to sort of zero back on the independent advice we had with regard to earthquake strengthening, that kind of thing. I just want to actually, without in any way casting aspersions on previous processes, is to absolutely ensure that we have the latest micro information in terms of which bits of the building, where that is at, because I think that is relevant. And then in terms of, I think Mayor Southgate has really touched on it really well, where she talked about in the LTP process, we have the cost of what I would call mothball, which is cost of preserve, retain at this point. That's a per annum cost, and that's happened around cities around the world with facilities can be closed for anyway, I don't want to prejudge that, versus then adding in the cost of the demolition and the option 2 costs. And I think it's kind of in the LTP, it's a year 3 current proposal, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So in a sense, and I know we have a decision-making process, but in a sense, the kind of, even within the LTP, there's a sum of money there, which means that there might be a fork in the road at that point. I'm just trying to be a bit lateral in thinking, and it could be an either-or decision, and I'm also being mindful of the TOTI journey around their ability to attract external funds. So I just want to explore some of those options, if I could. I think that's it. I think there's been a good round. And possibly, Amy, if you could, perhaps we could email the councillors who couldn't be present, obviously invite them to look at the hearings, which they can video, but if there's any additional questions that they may have as well, obviously email them. That's just to make sure we've covered. I think the questions have been quite comprehensive, and Mr. General Manager, I think we've given you some very good work which you'll be looking forward to carrying out. Thank you, seriously, but thank you, Sean, and for your presence and your assistance. If there's nothing further, thank everyone, particularly the submitters, for their attendance, and as I said, this part of the process now concludes. The next part of the process in terms of Sean Murray and his team's report goes into full council in terms of the next part of the LTP process. So without further ado, I now... Move and second? Move that item? Right, we have to move the item. Sorry, seconded, moved Councillor Bunting, seconded Councillor Wilson, and that those questions now be formally submitted that the submissions be received and noted, and that members' questions with regard to their written and verbal questions in terms of deliberations form part of the record. So all those in favour will say aye. Those to the carried unanimously. Thank you, people who are present, and also our 2 colleagues on Zoom for your attendance, O'Leary and Deputy Mayor Taylor, and thank you for the rest of you. And thank you to our submitters for sitting through this. Thank you. Meeting is now concluded. Thank you, staff, obviously.